All right, everybody. End of government shutdown party here. Some people are sad drinking, some people are happy drinking, and most people on Twitter are flat out confused right now, and they're just drinking. So, what I had to do in my interest of public service was reach out to the one, the only, one of the most trusted sources of yours truly out there in the Twitterverse, and that is Richard Baris. You all know him from People's Pundit Daily. Not only many people need to know is the People's Pundit Daily actually does a lot of policy analysis, and people need to get on there, subscribe, read that stuff daily because that'll get you out of the muck and the mire of the fake news bullshit. And he's not just polling, although is polling is what we use him for. A lot of people out there also need him to, shepherd them through the darkness of the bullshit. So I brought on for your viewing and listening pleasure, mostly listening because he ain't that pretty. It's Richard Baris. Say hello, Richard.
Hey guys, thanks for having me back. Yeah, you get older, you lose the looks. What can you say? Yeah, we
I don't
do.
know. I don't know if you ever had them, but you must have because your wife is actually beautiful. So I'm
Yeah, that's my
assuming at
wife's
one
side.
point, yeah.
That's my wife's side.
At one point, you did have your look. So anyway, Richard, my broadcasts are always unofficially sponsored by Polar Seltzer Water, and they give me no money, even though I've asked them to. So this is a very unofficial endorsement here. But Polar Seltzer Water, I prefer orange vanilla, Richard. You should look into it because when
I'm
you
a
do
black
these
cherry.
things, you're a black cherry guy. Okay,
Love
see,
polar.
Polar is the best. It is 0 calories, of course, 0 sodium. You can drink it all day. And I always leave the can unopened, Richard, because all these teetotaling bastards out there in Twitter world like to say I do a bit of day drinking, but in fact, I do not drink until 10 p.m. in the evening. And there's the crack to make it official. As always, the first sip goes out to our president, Donald J. Trump. Hmm. Now, people want to know, Richard. Let's just get right into it. We'll cover the Roger Stone bullshit on the back half.
All right.
I don't know how much time you have, but I want to cover the grand notion that Trump has caved in some way. This is going to be the prevailing wind on Twitter today. This, of course, is going to be the prevailing narrative on most mainstream media sources that people are reaching out and touch and go during the day. And then, of course, it'll all come home to roost around 8 p.m. when Tucker Carlson chooses to, lament openly and start quoting some man culture tweets that we've lost the will and the president no longer has the temperament to stand up for the conviction of his beliefs. So I'm going to throw it in the. I mean, I know my opinions on it. You probably can guess what my opinions are. We're not terribly divergent, the two of us, because simply we've been doing this for quite some time. So why don't you explain in your perception why Trump at this point would agree to a 3 week, which is, let's be very clear what that speech was in the Rose Garden. That was Trump. It was an hour late because Nancy attempted to stretch it in as
That's right.
many terms as possible. And the White House was, telling her in no uncertain words, a little Freudian slip there, that she absolutely had no wiggle room in here. This is a 3 week temporary funding bill for the agencies that have been affected and left unfunded, which of course is only 25% of the government. So that funding agreement that is in the works right now in both appropriations committees in the House and Senate that will fund back payments and future payments for the next couple of weeks to federal employees of the affected agencies. That will expire on February 15th, presumably allowing 3 weeks for more negotiations to occur. So why don't you go ahead and tell everybody your impression of Trump's speech and why the timing worked out the way it did?
Right. So the speech is important, right? So this goes till the 15th of February. We're not talking about an extended period of time where it's going to fall out of the headlines and go to the back burner. But Trump, while this goes on, he cannot do his State of the Union. She's not going to let that happen. So when we get the government open a little bit, then he can at least try to make his case, which is how it was kind of explained to us. But also the workers will get their back payments. They'll take that they'll take that ammunition out of the rifle because that's something they've been bludgeoning them with. But ultimately, Adam, I think and I know. Again, we have been doing this a while. Once he signed that omnibus bill and took Speaker Ryan's word for it in 2017, that was the time to really have this fight, and it handicapped him a little bit now. I mean, his biggest mistake was believing that Ryan was telling the truth. He wasn't. But he gave him He gave him the benefit of the doubt. So here we are now, and there's no reason to cry over spilled milk, but context is important, right? So when he gets this government open, then he'll have a little bit more options to try to make his case to the people. But once again, this is not unlike the last week and 10 days. They haven't had some kind of consensus or at least an outline of something they think they could do at the border, which people will support. They have the mainstream media only ever talks about Republican defections, but there are Democrat defections, and even the House and the Senate. But in the Senate, it would be a little bit easier to reach 60 votes than it would to try to push them in the House. So the thinking is get the government open, take that weapon away from them, and then muster something that they could get through the Senate, and that would pressure Pelosi. And that really is it. I mean, they would have to get a bill through the Senate to be able to really lean on her, Adam. That's
it was never gonna happen.
Right.
I think Mitch just made the floor exercise, which is essentially what it was yesterday, and that gave people, there was no way. It gave Cory Gardner cover, and you and I have talked offline, and we won't go in depth on this, but there are several senators, and we know that Cory's one of them. He's up in 2020. The last thing he needs in Colorado, which is drifting dangerously to the left, is to get into a shutdown fight over a border issue, which is not popular in Colorado in large part. So it's not a winning issue for him. There's no way in hell Mitt Romney is going to come in there and the first thing he's going to do is give cover to the president. That's not going to happen. He's not up for 5.5 more years. He doesn't give a shit. Certainly, you have people that have been quietly working behind the scenes to try to get this thing done so they don't have to deal with the issue. And frankly, if they wanted to get things done and put away and put on a shelf until September of this year, they didn't get it. They failed to come up with that type of stalemate reduction plan here, if you will, to get Trump to sign off on anything more than 3 weeks. So essentially, here's my take on it. I don't know if you can agree on this or not, but Pelosi and Schumer allowed Trump in the Oval Office showdown there early on where Trump said, listen, I'll take ownership of this shutdown. And as you know, Trump likes to talk in a world of now, not later. And he's not learning that the bulletin board material is really what it's all about in DC. And because you said it yesterday doesn't make it any less salient today as far as the political discussion is concerned. So when you take ownership of this version of a shutdown, that tattooed on your head, you're not going to get away from that. So yes, granted, we showed the country that really pathetic, dysfunctional nature of Congress is in fact really what it is. They're currently at a 13% approval rating, which is back down to their historic lows, which is, of course, the president can maintain. He's 4 times as popular, particularly within his shake on the independents and the Republican side. So I think he just said to it, okay, now it's yours, Pelosi, because now we have 3 weeks. And if we don't get this, what Pelosi said was no discussion, no negotiation until the government is open and funded, which it will now be after tonight when these things are voice voted in and they're signed. Now it becomes 3 weeks of negotiation. Pelosi is unlikely to move off of the $2.7 billion for non-wall funding border security issues. And now we're back where we were before. And if they think this is the same fight on February 16th that it was, in December, they're wrong, because now it's no longer Trump taking ownership of the shutdown. It's Trump having taken the first lump, the first black eye, the first blink by going out to the Rose Garden and saying, okay, I'm going to yield to this demand to open up the government again, despite the fact that I said I wouldn't. And now he has to listen to the whining alley cats in his own base on Twitter and Facebook and all the boomers that get upset by following these people and think, oh, the Trump plan, the Trump wall is dead. In actuality, we just pushed this fight into a different ring. Now this ring is owned, this fight is owned by Pelosi if we don't get anything that we want agreed to in the next 3 weeks. So we changed the dynamic of this argument today. That's all we really did. I mean, either the government stays shut down for 3 more weeks, right? And air traffic controllers start fleeing and resigning, and TSA lines become incredibly long. There is no State of the Union, at least in the forum and venue that we're used to. And frankly, massive impacts on things like the Super Bowl, which rely on a lot of governmental agencies like Department of Homeland Security and others that work towards safety parameters. And of course, the TSA, needs to be functional at all the airports, and particularly in Atlanta, where the Super Bowl is going to be.
Where
So
it's going to be
don't discount that. Don't discount how big this is of a 3-week period. What's going to occur in those 3 weeks? Everybody's going to get paid, back paid. We're right back to square one, but TSA workers are back. Air flight controls are back under normal, and the Super Bowl can go off without a hitch. And guess what else can go off without a hitch, Richard? The State of the Union can go off,
That's
where
where
he
I'm
will
going with
have
it.
another
That's
bite
right.
at the apple in a week to do that. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's what's getting lost on some people here. He's got to get out and make that case. And really, what are the options at this point, Adam? Either get people paid. You can't have workers like you said, TSA. That's a real concern. That these people, they're showing up and doing what they're doing, but at some point that may not continue. People run out of money. Some people live paycheck to paycheck. They won't have money to get to work, to put the gas in the tank to get to work. So, he put this now in more courts than his own. So this is how I see this. As of now, up until today, until this deal, this was all on Donald Trump. And there's no way, and the polling shows that. I think it's pretty conclusive. You know that. The polling shows that. People understood that, yeah, it's true they could pass it and they have some hand in this, but he's the one who set this in motion. And he's the one he can end it right now. They see that. Americans, we get into these fights because most of us in this business are ideologues. The American people aren't ideologues. They don't look at it like that, or at least the people in the middle that matter when election comes around. So he needed to do something to put not the blame, but to at least make it possible so somebody else, some other party, some other figure could start to shoulder some of this, because it was all on him. He's got to give that State of the Union address. You got somebody like Cory Gardner. You're going to see more of those. Cory Gardner's got, I think we just put this up the other day on People's Funding Daily. In Colorado's number 3 for impact on government shutdown. So yeah, you got a lot of federal money. Not just, I'm not talking about assistance. I'm talking about contracts for defense contractors. You have Virginia, Maryland, and you don't think about Colorado. There are a lot of them out there. If I don't quote me on it, but I think they're in the top 3. So the bottom line is he needed to be able to make a move somewhat. And we're in a stalemate here. The votes, they're just not there. There were some people starting to peel away. And the purists, I guess, I don't even know if you want to call them that, Adam. Where were they when, it was a healthcare vote. Everybody was worried about repealing Obamacare. That was the sacred cow for a lot of these people. That energy was wasted, which should have been, directed toward the wall if it was going to be a failure anyway. But this is a major promise. He had to be seen as fighting for this. He did fight for it, and he's going to continue to. But his only other option was to declare a national emergency. I've heard the talk. I'm sure you have too. His lawyers have it locked down where they think they can avoid all of the challenges. I know they will run to the judge they need to run to. It will be an injunction, and that'll be it. And then what? And then if you want to see a stalemate, that'll be it for a while. So, he made this move. You're gonna have people that are complaining about it, but at least now it's a conversation again. She said, "Open it back up, and we'll negotiate in good faith." We're gonna see that she was telling the truth.
Well, yeah, they're not only telling the truth, but this is a seminal moment here for the
Yeah,
Trump administration to show that they are open to negotiation, which is clearly what he got into this whole forum about, was his bill predicated on his ability to negotiate, and he
that's
thinks that
right.
he can take that into the boardroom, into any room, situation room in the White House. So he's made some mistakes along the way. I don't think anybody's going to argue with that at this point. But specifically addressing these naysayers and these people, that Chicken Little syndrome is obviously
Always.
outrageous at this point. And the president is dealing with a finite period of time as an executive. He's up for reelection in 2020. He's got to make hard and fast moves now, because you're not going to want to make them later and make it more controversial as you get closer to the election. So my sticking point on all this is, why assume that Trump has lost all of his gumption? He has surrendered. When we're talking about, I guess you just chalk it up to this low information, high intensity voter syndrome that we've seen out of Trump from the beginning here. We've got a lot of people that are not interested in learning civics that they didn't learn when they were in high school and college. They're not looking to relearn how government works. They simply are in instant gratification mode, and they want the tweets and they want the memes that say we won, we got the wall, we blah 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 blah. And you and I both know that um, historically speaking, the president has kept up with more of his pledges and promises than anything the likes of which
It's
we've
not
seen.
even close.
It's,
It's
yeah,
not even close.
we can't even find anybody to compare him to at this point. So, but win or lose in 2020, I think this will be borne out by all the polling moving forward, is whether or not the semantics battle over the wall is settled or not. Jimmy Carter didn't lose re-election because of a promise that he made about the Middle East and oil and all the other shit.
Right.
George Bush didn't lose. George H.W. Bush didn't lose because he, made some pledge or another about NAFTA, or it didn't work out or whatever. I mean, clearly they lost because of the current economic situation in the country, and that's what is going to be borne out in any reelection effort for almost any president. Historically speaking, it's about, particularly post World War II, it's about what the economy is doing at any given moment. And I think we're just getting too hung up on the semantics of whether we get a fence, we get a wall, we get a steel slab, we get a blah 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 blah. I mean, Trump has boxed himself in on getting border security that is inclusive of a barrier. I think that's where we stand right now. And provided he gets some of that, did you think he was going to get it for nothing? So now what people have unintentionally put themselves and the president into this forum where, in order to get border security, he is going to have to give something, and we know it's going to be in the arena of immigration.
Yeah.
And we know how the base is going to react to DACA reforms, i.e. TBS reform, and allowing these extensions to occur, or even worse, making it a concrete situation by taking what was once an executive order by the Obama administration and cementing that and codifying that with actual law, which is, if I'm the Democrats, Richard, that's my finish line. Because
and 3-year extensions won't do for them either now.
No. I absolutely agree with you. I mean, are people willing to give this up? Are people willing to give up about 1 million pathways to citizenship?
Yeah.
For DACA recipients, and innumerable potentially TBS extensions. I mean, are people willing to get that for maybe 700 miles of the wall? I mean, what do you think the base is going to say?
Without the chain. And I know the wall has become a symbol, but Adam, the chain, if we're talking about this from a number standpoint, I know people are worried about voters. That's what that's a lot of opposition. It comes from the fact that they're trying to establish a permanent underclass of voters. The chain is the problem. So when we look at how many people come here from DACA, it pales in comparison when we start compounding that by 3, 4, 5 times because they go down the chain and their family. And chain migration is not even on the table in this now. So he's been pushed into this. He went with the RAISE Act, when the Republicans had all the entire Congress. That would have been a palatable solution, but the Republicans don't have the entire Congress anymore. They didn't even have 50% of Republican Party, is aligned with Trump when they actually get there to DC on issues like this. So it's not like he ever had full control. So what they got to take into consideration here, and they're not, because I see it on Twitter, is that you got to be careful you don't paint him into a corner where if he if he gets that if they get that DACA and 3-year extensions, don't suffice, and they need a permanent path, they'll get it. And without that chain, if you think those numbers are large and daunting now, it'll be overwhelming. I mean, there's no reason to throw out estimates. We're talking tens of millions. It's in the tens of millions.
Absolutely. Don't people hear what the subtext of what Trump is saying? Trump is saying, listen, if we're apprehending 60 to 100,000 of these people at the border, it means we're missing maybe twice that amount, right? So now we've got, even the people that we apprehend are not removed from the country in a greater context. Most of them will declare the usual Obama administered line, I'm gay and they're going to kill me, or this is my son, he's being recruited in a gang, and whatever asylum line they have to take. And then we are forced to file this asylum petition, and then they go
Well, looks like did I lose connection? Oh, I'm still here with everybody. Right. Well, I think where he was going with this, and it's important to know where he was going with this, is that there are a million ways for them to remain anyway. So that basically he's trying to explain to everybody that this could get a lot worse, folks. This could get a whole lot worse. So he put that down. He laid that down the other day in that speech as a marker. That's what he proposed. Anytime, and these are negotiations, and he doesn't have the party on his side. So I think where Adam's going with this is that it could get a whole lot worse than what people are now accusing Donald Trump of caving to. So you're not going to get what what you maybe could have gotten in even as recent as 2 years ago. They're going to have ways to apply for asylum. They're going to have ways to stay. Again, really, when we're talking about the issue of immigration, I think I have a grasp on what concerns everybody, and without removing that chain, then it's not going to fix the problem. It's going to get worse actually. So it wouldn't matter if he gives them a 3-year extension on DACA, which Ann Coulter came out and said was an amnesty. That's crazy. He didn't even offer a pathway to citizenship. But these people, a lot of these people, they make money off of hysteria, and the more salacious, the better. But in reality, a 3-year extension would probably to TPS or DACA would probably be one of the better results at this point. It's just where we are. And I know a lot of people would say, well, why doesn't he just declare a state of emergency? They will find a judge to run to. They will. And at the best, from what we hear from talking, to our own sources, their lawyers have it worked out where they could, at best expedite it to the Supreme Court. And then at this point, we've seen it now. The court is a right-leaning court, but we've seen now on several issues where you can't count on them to come through for you every time. So I think it's people think about the alternatives here too.
I apologize. I guess my internet kicked out.
I was just going to do a Q&A. Yeah, your internet kicked out, but after I just wrapped that up, I was just going to go to the comments. But good, I'm glad you're back.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm still having an issue on my end loading stuff. So, yeah, I think what you were talking about there on the tail end was the Supreme Court
That's
and
right.
the fact that they can take what they want and not take what they don't want. When we've seen that in the DACA case, where they're not going to decide a political issue prior to a campaign.
That's
They're
right.
not going to do it.
No
So,
way.
what makes you think they're going to take up the injunction that the Ninth Circuit issues when the national emergency is declared to reappropriate funds in the executive branch to the wall? They have purview over all this. I mean, people who keep talking about these nebulous Article 2 authorities need to understand that it's still all subject to judicial review. So I'm quite perplexed why people don't understand this, and they can bitch and they can moan the same way they do with their speculation that RBG is already dead, and why can't somebody just push her into retirement? That's not the way things work. There is no mechanism for that. It doesn't matter if she's on life support right now. I don't believe she is, but none of this means anything because it's all subject to judicial regulations that they've set up for themselves, which is basically leave us alone. We are the ultimate independent authority. You can't tell us what to do. Na 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 foo foo and whatever else they've typically said. So missing a bulk of what you said, I definitely think that people looking to the Supreme Court to decide Trump's political battles, you're not going to find that. I mean, they're going to decide battles that have been set in motion years prior. And they may decide to take up the Judge O'Connor decision in Texas over the healthcare, striking down the healthcare law as unconstitutional. They may decide that they can't avoid not taking that up because the next enrollment period will cause all kinds of problems if they don't. I think they might do that, but again, like you said, that thing seems to be off the social conscious board as far as Trump's base is concerned. It seems to be some kind of weird, overlooked, unchecked box where all of a sudden now, it's, oh no, that doesn't mean Trump won't get reelected if he didn't keep a promise to repeal Obamacare. He's already done enough through regulation to reverse any momentum Obamacare had to be sustainable in the long run anyway. All it was doing is waiting for the court, a federal judge, to have the sense of the courage of their convictions to put out an issue like Judge O'Connor did in Texas. So that'll go to the Fifth Court. The Fifth Circuit will, if you've ever seen the Fifth Circuit comprised of who it is, you'll know that that will be sent up as is to the Supreme Court. And I don't think the Supreme Court, even with Judge Roberts predisposed to preferring not to kill this legislative initiative, I don't think they can turn their back on a federal judge ruling and the Fifth Circuit upholding it. I think that that's something that'll probably get struck down. As far as DACA is concerned, they've already said they're not going to touch this thing until late fall session in 2020. It's going to be far too late.
Right.
Yeah, it's going to be far too late to be a deciding factor in the presidential election. So,
and remember too, when Roberts got Obamacare last time, when they were deciding on the individual mandate, this time they would have the support of the lower. They'd have the precedent of the lower court. They didn't have that last time, if you remember. There were, some cases in some districts, some cases in the other. But for the most part, most of the federal judges that, even including Brett Kavanaugh, by the way, deferred. And they didn't want to legislate. Even the right-leaning judges saw it as legislating from the bench. So it was not the same decision. There weren't the same considerations going up. And I know it's, idealistically, we shouldn't be talking about political considerations when we talk about the court, but that's reality. That is what it is.
And it's always been that way, and it will forever be that way.
Always going to be. Right.
Just absolutely bizarre to me that I cannot open up, even after restarting my iPad, I cannot open up either YouTube or Periscope, which is just strange.
You want me to look at some?
Yeah. Go ahead and take some questions here for some people because I'm not seeing any right now.
We are looking, at somewhat. I can't. Jennifer Briggs. What's the bet? Trump is up to something else right now. I think there was some talk about the federal workers, and that's a very steep hill to climb. That would have had to have been an all-in effort. I don't see that. What I think Trump is doing right now is that he understands immigration was an important reason for his election. He feels like he has to fight for it, and his instincts are right. And I actually never said, I know some people on Twitter before were asking, but I never said he had to, get it done in order to be reelected, but he had to fight for this. And you just have to be careful where there is a point where things can backfire on you. And, I'm not here apologizing for Trump, but I'm just saying one man a revolution, does not make. And I think that some people had these expectations that were a little bit unrealistic. And when we do look at the list of accomplishments, we did the year 2 list. I was still doing it, actually. We did year 1. If it was anybody else, Adam, this would be a major story on the anniversary of his second year in office. A major story. It took Obama 8 months to really get anywhere on Obamacare. And that was, the only major legislative accomplishment the man had. And then, of course, he bailed on a lot of other issues. Whereas Trump, for the most, you can disagree with the man's policy, disagree with the style, but you can't take away from him how much he's got done and actually how much he's remained focused, considering everything that's coming his way.
I can't argue with any of that. I mean, it really, if you look at it from a policy achievement point, we've done a lot of the work on the front end that you could possibly do, which admittedly, Obama did on the back end of his presidency, realizing that he wasn't getting anywhere legislatively. So he had to work through the regulatory side in order to achieve anything. And Trump has been doing that on the front end. And he did it the smart political way, which is bash the shit out of the Democrats for doing that. And then utilizing that weapon when you get into office. That's a smart way. Don't wait, just do it right away. And the regulatory rollbacks, all they do is they set things in motion that can make things legislatively easier to accomplish down the road. You show that there's not as much pain as people think there's going to be, and then that's it. I think with this shutdown issue versus other shutdowns, we've got 25%, and there are 25% inherently dangerous parts of the government to leave affected, and that's where you miss the show of government waste that you have in a full government shutdown or a sequestration mode that we had back in the Obama administration, which was cut 10% across everything, which impacted equally the parts Republicans like to fund, such as defense, and then of course the programs, the public funding programs that the Democrats like to fund, the entitlement programs, they all got 10% cuts. And guess what? It wasn't the end of the world. Not only was not
Not
the end
it.
of the world,
Well,
we couldn't find a discernible impact. Therefore, the political will to address it basically done, and there has never been that reinstituted 10% back across those agency cuts. And we're not any worse off for wear there. But I think there's an intelligible point to be made there, and I think a lot of people, including myself, were discussing the machinations by which we could get away with the RIF, which is reductions in force, which is the
right.
holy grail of the Republican mantra of cutting back government waste, which is getting rid of some of these federal jobs that once instituted can never be taken away. And this has been going on for many, many years, but
Many years. Yeah.
even added to by Reagan, who added exponential number of jobs and even an agency that has become bloated and very ineffective. And he's the one who established the Veterans Affairs Agency. So this was our chance because in order to get it, you must do 22 consecutive work days, 23 consecutive working days as a shutdown, or 30 plus in its entirety, in totality. Then you may start to, according to legal precedent and regulations that are there, you can start to reduce the number of people in certain agencies that are only those affected by this shutdown. So we would have been cutting agencies that we don't necessarily want to be cutting. We don't
Right.
necessarily want to be cutting into these enforcement oversight agencies that keep us safe. We really want to get at the other
The
agencies that are bloated.
unnecessary nonsense.
Exactly. So
Right.
that was the answer given to me by some people in the know
He's not an
and
ideologue. He's not an
and corrected
ideologue,
me.
Adam. Like an
Right.
ideologue might have done that. They might have went for it, but he's not. Trump is a pragmatist. He's like a common sense kind of pragmatist. He's not somebody who, at all costs. I mean, he's going to think about it. If that was a viable option, folks. Not even that it wasn't viable, but I think that like you just pointed out, TSA, if we're going to really take an axe or a scalpel, let's even say, to government, and to some of these permanent bureaucracies, is TSA really where you want to start? Kind of thing.
Mm.
So, right. So look at it from that point of view. But I also too think that there are just some people that, they're getting tired maybe of the double standard, Adam. They view this as, that Republicans took back, first one third, almost the entire Congress, then took back the entire Congress, and they were always meant to compromise and compromise. I hear this a lot, but then the Democrats take one half of one third of government, and they seem to be driving the bus. And I think that that's behind some of this, a little bit of a frustration with the double standard. But that's the construct, folks. That's what I talk about all the time with the construct, and that's how this works. That's not going to get better until you deal with the things that make the construct, that make that
Mm.
handicap. And until then, you have to work. That's why we call it the construct, because you are literally in the box they've constructed for you. You have to work within those parameters until you can get at the bigger stuff.
Well, this is the point I want to make as well. To your point, I want to piggyback on that. People say, "Why is that?" Tell me in a constructive manner how the Democrats can take such a portion, a limited portion of government, and then railroad the entire process. Well, they do so by staying together, and they do it in a way that you know you look back at the Obamacare debacle, and they knew they were going into it was the Titanic going into the iceberg. I mean, they knew that they were surrendering not only the House but definitely the Senate. There was no way they could engineer. They had the polling, they had the analytics at that point to know that it was going to be serious pain in the midterms. And why did they do it then? Because they knew if they waited after the midterm, it was going to be serious pain for the president in 2012. So it was done. Careers were lost. People on their deathbeds were rolled into the Senate to get that by one vote, and that killed them for right up until this past election where they could get their footing back in the House. And it's their virtue of standing together in the face of certain political death is kind of a phenomenon.
It's admirable.
And
I
Yeah,
find it admirable.
it's admirable in a way that would be admirable to see multiple people jumping off the bridge because they saw somebody else jump off the bridge. I mean, I would, you want to find your own
Tried to say that.
superlative to attach to it. But that's why, and that's why the shutdown managed to go as long as it did. That's why the Senate was never going to crack to 60 votes. And it's if I have to explain, or guys like you have to explain every single time why we can't blow up the filibuster now, because why the fuck would you blow up a filibuster after you lost the control of the House? That would be a bad move, because what the hell are you going to get 51 votes for? You're never going to get anything out of the House you want. We had a lot of chance to have the discussion, as you said, when we had full control of the government. Why didn't things happen then? It's because people like Paul Ryan, and to some extent Kevin McCarthy as well, told the president, if you push this issue to a point, we're going to get beat in the midterm and you're going to lose control of Congress. So what does Trump do? He defers to the wisdom of these establishment lifers in the GOP. He does not take up the time to go Google himself what midterms look like for first-term presidents and see that he's headed to a wood chipper anyway, and that he should push as hard as he can and promise as many jobs to defeated lawmakers as you possibly fucking can on the front end, not the back end.
That's the game.
Seriously miscalculated that decision prior to the midterms, ushered, mind you, into reality and complicit behavior by large Twitter accounts who defied the notion and the prevailing winds of how hard it was going to be to retain that majority.
Hold that.
Exactly. And those people should be held accountable.
It was over. Look, I never put anything past Donald Trump's ability to thumb his nose in the face of history, whatever you want to say, however you want to put it. And yes, the Bush administration, they didn't have to deal with that in 2002. We were talking about a major terror attack that something like the country had never seen before, and Democrats were not trusted on national security. If there was going to be any hope for that, there needed to be something done on healthcare. Once they got that pre-existing conditions argument, that's what drove this election. You hear all these people, they come up with this blowhard nonsense. In the data, when you look into the electorate that threw out the Republican Party in the House, they didn't think Robert Mueller was not politically driven. They thought he was running a politically driven investigation. They, in the swing districts and states, they agree with Trump on his immigration platform. It was not an unfriendly electorate. They just were concerned with pre-existing conditions because that was their top issue. And we spoke about this how many times before the election. If it was going to happen, something, in order to defy history, you have to kind of make it first, right? Or something has to happen. In 2002, that was the terror attack. It really needed to be a complete full circle campaign promises, 1, 2, 3. And once they lost that pre-existing condition argument, that was it. And they did with that thumbs down. There's no doubt about it. That was the moment. That was, you can plot it on a graph. That's the moment enthusiasm went down. He ran all over the country. He got Republican enthusiasm back up. But that issue was impossible to argue against because it wasn't passed. And Democrats were able to make a case, something was like almost impossible to disprove because it never became a reality. So all they had was the message. And that electorate, healthcare was on their mind. And that, and so once we're at where we're at now, back maybe a year ago, you were still looking at an election where the map was incredibly favorable to the Republican Party in the upper chamber. This time around, it's not that favorable. It's not ugly, but it's not that favorable. So to blow up the filibuster now, I've heard that both sides. I think they're going to do it anyway, Adam. Honestly,
I think the Democrats are going to do it.
They're going to do it anyway, of course. Yeah, it doesn't matter, at this point. But
we would, if we did so now, we'd be doing so in the face of just blind ambition of getting anything out of the House that we would want anyway. I mean, it really wouldn't work. And I think it's something people need to hear from you and other pollsters out there and those who have. We tried to do our best in giving a postmortem on why things swung certain ways, but not getting into this diatribe about canvassing and all this other shit that's basically been legalized in California. Not
Yeah,
basically, it has literally been legalized. Or the nasty tricks that were played in Maricopa County and the Phoenix area. I mean, I'm not getting back into this shit. The real reason we lost was history. The real reason we lost was you can spread a message easier in a Senate race if you're Donald Trump than you possibly can dropping yourself inside a congressional district, just because it's a completely different dynamic. And exactly, everything's not going to be, everything's just different. It polls different. There are different dynamics everywhere, and they were swing districts. God damn it, swing districts that we lost. Now people say, well, not only did we lose, we lost 40 seats. Well, look at these swing districts. The 24 seats that we absolutely could not have lost, and we did. I'm not going to get into why we specifically lost, because there are different reasons in each one of those. But let me tell you and assure you that the next time these 24 seats are up, they're going to be up in a presidential election year, which is a different animal altogether. We are going to outraise them dollar for dollar. They're going to come out bruised and battered from a progressive circle jerk firing squad of a primary that's just going to be damaging to whoever the hell makes it out of there. They will not have a unified message rolling into 2020 except anti-Trump. That's the only message they're going to have. Anti-Trump is not necessarily going to work 2 elections in a row in a swing district. The seats that we lost in its entirety were less than 50,000 total votes. And that's all those seats combined. Yep. That can be switched back, provided we have the right candidates and the right message and the right money. That can be switched back. Almost the expectations are that if Trump is not completely outmatched by a Democrat candidate that I have yet to see declare, or some spectacle that comes out of the Mueller report that I have no knowledge that is happening, he is going to empower those swing districts again. And we're going to laser focus where we know we only have to pull together an extra 1,000 or 2,000 votes to win. And we know now what they do in their canvassing efforts. We're going to laser focus on that. And we know now the games they play in Maricopa. We're going to laser focus on that. We're going to do what we have to do in rural New Jersey and New York and Pennsylvania to make sure we don't fuck up that way again. And
some of those,
we've talked about it. I don't want to get it because you and I can get into inside baseball discussing particular congressional districts, and it's interesting to us, but these people probably don't give a shit. Suffice to say that it is not as steep of a hill to climb as people would assume to get the House back. The Senate flips into the crosshairs this time. That is where I think we could possibly lose. In a worst case scenario, Trump can win, and we can still lose 2 to 3 senators.
Absolutely.
In that election.
Yeah, absolutely. And you were getting into this a little bit, but people on Twitter, they're going to have this. It's always the sky is falling, and now we're going to see this again with the show. We're seeing it right now with this deal. But we were just talking about history, and some of these people, they didn't want to hear about history in 2018. And now some of the people who were using that, on the left too. Oh, well, it's, history's hard to defy. Democrats are the favorite. Now they're going to have to swallow that going into 2020 because barring everything that you just said, Donald Trump is going to be a force, and his approval rating, even in the mid 40s, would make him a favorite. And that's just reality. We're getting more polarized, so we see the Electoral College, it will make it easier for him to be reelected. But any president, as long as the economy's humming along the way it is now, as long as there's not a major scandal, that's history will be on his side. It was against him this past November. It'll be on his side coming up. And it won't be that hard. We're talking about tiny margins across the country, thousands of votes here, thousands of votes there to flip some of those seats back. So, just gives people perspective, where something happens, we get caught up in the 24-hour news cycle and we say, that's it. His reelection's done after that's it. And more oftentimes, more times than not, in 2 weeks, you won't even remember. And that's how politics works. So that's why the fundamentals matter so much. Like going into 2018, the fundamentals were on their side. Going into 2020, like you said, as long as they now the games, to add third-party candidates to that as well, on that list, we're going to have something on this. It's taking us a while because it's every single district. they were very smart. And the way they supported third party candidates in some of these districts and then not in others was very
Yep.
smart. It was brilliant. They knew they didn't have a DNC behind them. So they did a lot through PACs and a lot, on the local level. But it was smart. But that again, that kind of impact is easier to have in the midterm, and it's
Mm.
another animal coming up in a presidential election. It was high turnout for a midterm election in 2018, historically high, but it
Mm.
still wasn't presidential levels across the country.
No, and let's give a nod to the Soros funded operations, the Tom Steyer and
That's
Bloomberg
right.
funded operation. I mean, Act Blue was a ridiculously insidious, effective weapon that mobilized people using
Personally,
an enhanced analytic version of what Obama administration started, and they used every single possible populist program email list out there and voter contact list, and they just aggregated all of it, stomped us to shit. So it wasn't Mercer and Adelson and the usual crowd coming in to bail us out of the water. Koch brothers were MIA.
yeah,
And, so we got our tools of the trade used against us. And the dark money flowed into the back pockets of Democrats, and it flowed into these third party operations surreptitiously with no one putting two and two together. And only now are we realizing what they fucking did in Alabama. And if you think about how close that margin was, we now know
that could
why
be it.
fellows like you and myself were wrong, is thinking that we were going to see a 2-point win for Moore and ended up on the wrong side of a 1.5 loss, is
Right.
because of the shit that they pulled. It was unbelievable. They just they got into the fake news world, only a slice of which we did in the presidential, and they enhanced it and went after voters down there in weird ways that were effective. And they cut off. Looks like they managed to take 5 or maybe even 6% of the religious right voters and keep them home. And that will not happen again in Alabama in 2020. I think Doug Jones is screwed. Doesn't
He's done.
matter
Right.
what he does.
Right.
I honestly think, by the same virtue, we're probably screwed in Colorado. I think that'll be the switch off. My expectations are
He's done.
Gardner for whoever we run in Alabama.
Right.
For the asshats and idiots out there who think that we absolutely have to yank a very successful Secretary of State out of office and put him into a Kansas race in a presidential election year, I defy that logic. I defy it. Now, I'm not saying you can pluck out a Matt Schlapp and be assured of a Kansas victory, because frankly, they're a fickle bunch there. The Republicans there will turn on you, as they did against Chris Kobach in the governor's election.
Absolutely.
Roberts was never a slam dunk because he was a bumbling old, and in some cases senile, infirm senator, and even 6 years ago, he was seen that way. So all it takes is somebody not named Chris Kobach that the party doesn't hate down there in Kansas. We don't need Mike Pompeo to leave as Secretary of State. I honestly think that would be a bad move. I think he's solidified and shored us up in a lot of ways, with the temperament of our message around the world and dictating foreign affairs, particularly with the North Korean issue. As it's quieted down in Europe, we don't hear a lot of that angst anymore, unless you're watching MSNBC about forcing NATO to cough up some extra money. Isn't it funny when Nikki Haley leaves that Heather doesn't make so much noise that we have to read about her all the time, because she doesn't plan on running for president in 2024.
Right.
So it's kind of funny.
Right.
Who the hell knew who Samantha Power was when she was UN ambassador? It wasn't until we figured out she was unmasking people through our intelligence agency that anybody realized she was ever a UN ambassador to begin with. So this is all about ambition. And I certainly don't see Pompeo as a guy that's ambitiously looking to get to the Senate. However, McConnell is much smarter than people think. And I think he's creating this vacuum that people had the expectation that we need to draft Pompeo in order to win Kansas. How fucked are we in 2020 if we need to draft the Secretary of State to win Kansas?
I think we always get into these arguments too. I mean, it's been years, it's many cycles that I hear this. Going back to even the Bush administration, that area of the country still could be, competitive. Dakota, and it's so important people to remember that Kansas has a progressive history. Very, they have deep strains of progressivism that run through their blood, and even on the right, it's considered a ruby red state, but even on the right, there is more, I don't even, moderate's not even the right word, because there are just certain different values, and they will, if it's somebody like a Chris Kobach, they'll turn on you for sure. And as long as it's somebody who's not like that, more in the, like a Pompeo, it doesn't have to be Pompeo. It just has to be somebody who's still, palatable to them. And there is, I would say, we did poll too, Kansas, before 2018. What happened there? There were just some who just ultimately, they said, if you forced me into a voter booth, then I would vote for Chris, but I don't like him, and I just don't want to have to. Don't force me to do this. And in the end, they couldn't, and they stayed home. A lot of them just stayed home. And then there was a certain percentage of women Republican who they went and they did not vote for him. So as long as you stay out of the image of Chris Kobach, you should be okay. And like you said, if you're having this conversation in 2020, guys, then it's a problem. It's going to be a bad election all around at that point.
I think you look at we're going to have an opening in Tennessee. We're going to have the opening in Kansas. These are tolerable.
Can we take Tennessee off the table now? Can we take the discussion about Tennessee off the table now? I mean,
unless Bob Corker somehow manages to reinvent himself and get the nomination, I don't see it as a problem. These are the states you want to fight your open seats in, and I think that McConnell, he is up himself. I certainly think the Southern strategy that will be deployed by the president will shore up these states into the Midwest. I'm not concerned with it. I think there's a couple other races that we'll have to keep our eye on. I'm mainly concerned with the insidious senators that can kind of bop us in the head along the way, policy-wise, moving forward. So I think the biggest issue of the day I want people to take away from this Rose Garden shutdown announcement is that, one, learn the lesson from the Democrats that those who play together stay together, and they're playing ball together, and they're staying together on this stuff. And they have a lot of free-ranging molecules, I'll call them, floating around their caucus right now. And they have a lot to contain. They've got swing seat people that I was talking about before that narrowly won their district. Barely won it. And they have to win it again in the presidential election year. They can't defy everything the president tries to do and get reelected again. They just can't, because they'll be seen as obstructionists and they'll be voted out of office. And then you've got the free-ranging wacko molecules in the Ocasio-Cortez, I call her now because that's a joke, Cortez, and this crazy, the two crazy Islamic members, they're off on their own crazy radical wing. And then, of course, like I said, you got this progressive message that's going to get hammered to the left. As for the next year and a half is going to be nothing.
Look at what they're doing with Kamala Harris. Look at what they're doing with her. I actually, we took a look at her strategy. I don't know if anybody's noticed, but she's gobbling up a lot of Clinton people. And I've been impressed with her strategy the most. So she's going to take in the nomination, she's going to take a Southern strategy. She's going to do what Hillary Clinton did. Know that you're going to have some problems in the uber left, uber progressive early states, in the Iowa caucus, in New Hampshire. She already understands and knows that somebody like an Elizabeth Warren probably has a better chance there. And their primary is proportional. So she gets the support of Southern Black Democrats, and then the more moderate wing of the party, she can, especially in a crowded field, she can gobble up proportional delegates as she goes and win the nomination. Now, it's still very early. But look at her record as a prosecutor in California. They're making her run away and backpedal from this record. This is a record she may take in a general and tout and say, I was tough on this. And that would be something that appeals to voters in the middle who may lean to the left but still aren't crazy. And they're going to make, like you said, it's going to be a race to the left, and they're already making people like her apologize for what are mainstream positions. And everybody wants to get their picture taken with AOC. Everybody wants their picture taken with AOC, but she couldn't vote for the bill the other day because of it funded ICE. That's how radical we're talking that wing of the party is, and that may play in a Democratic nomination, but come a general election, it's not going to play well.
No, I think she wants to cast herself as an Obama acolyte. That's with right. A limited record that can hurt her, but a futuristic point of view as a young senator from a big state. much like Obama was, and then use the Clinton modus operandi of fundraising. Problem is, there's just too many fish in the barrel. There's not enough oxygen out there for her, and frankly, there's going to be 5 other people running out of California, which is going to
That's
suck
her
up
problem.
her fundraising base. I don't see anywhere in New York a lust to run into the arms of Kamala Harris. The problem with running, and getting your base out of Georgia and Mississippi and the African American blocks down there to get through the primary process. The problem is, like you said, you're going to have to, one, apologize for your record of keeping Black Americans imprisoned
It's almost,
unfairly,
yeah.
and two, everything you say to appease the Southern Bloc is going to backfire in New York, and it's going to backfire in Illinois and your home state of California. So I don't even like getting into it. People ask me who's the odds-on favorite. I said there is no
Way
odds-on
too early.
favorite. Way too
Yeah,
early. I don't care. I think Biden would be our biggest challenge. But I
me too.
think he will never get out of the primary process alive. I think there's just too many people on his flank. He's too old. He's too white. He's said things in the past that are so conservative. I blush at them, and there's just really no reality he can escape his long, sordid, moderate history as a centrist in Washington, and that will end up killing him in the early states. If
That
they
would
keep
do it.
moving up all their primaries so early, this thing will be over in a year. I mean, it's not as if
Three
we have
months.
to deal with it too much longer than a year, because they're all push
Yeah.
him up um,
He would
so
definitely
early.
be the biggest threat, though, in a general election to Donald Trump. He would.
Yeah.
I think so, because I mean, really, what makes Donald Trump a strong general election candidate is the working class base. When you win that high of a percentage of the working class, that's why he beat Romney among minorities. Even with everybody said the rhetoric, the rhetoric. When you do that, the crossover, it's not. We're not only talking about whites, the crossover into different subgroups, it starts to overlay. So when you have the largest share of the largest two-party share of a working class vote ever, you're going to naturally see an increase among certain voters, Hispanic voters, whatever. But if somebody like Joe Biden were to get that nomination, that's going to be a problem for Donald Trump. Somebody like Elizabeth Warren, who speaks about a working class message, isn't as
Mhm.
much of a threat because she'll lose certain other blocks. Politics, people talk about like it's like it occurs in a vacuum, but it's not. It's just like, political coalitions, they move like markets move. One stock may go up, but that because that stock does well, it's performing well, it's hurting another stock in the same industry. So that entire index can't go up together. That's how it works. So if you appeal to one block, you may move over and like Donald Trump's biggest challenge is this right now. He's got a working class message, and he loses part of the traditional Republican,
Mhm.
what has been over the last 20 years the traditional Republican element, and that's the Bill Kristols of the world. Is going to have to trade him. It's like I say all the time. It was still a better deal because you're not maybe going to win Virginia back anytime soon.
No.
It's headed on the wrong course. Where are you
Yeah.
going to fill that gap on the map? So
Yeah.
that's why the Democratic nomination is going to be so fun to watch, Adam. It will be fun.
Yeah. I think what people have to understand is what you're addressing when you say, the ups and downs. The ups and downs are incremental by nature. They're not. It's just largely in politics. It's a zero sum game.
Yeah,
Voters are a zero sum game, which is why when you get down to pollsters and analysts, we take we take we take it with a grain of salt when somebody tells us that we're bringing in new voters, right? Because the hardest thing in the world in politics or the political science realm is to quantify new voters, or voters that have not voted in the last 3 or 4 elections, or even worse, voters that are just basically almost fell off the rolls in some states, and they're engaging their excitement to get out there. That's how you get a 1% victory, or out of your polling for Donald Trump, as you did, is finding a way to quantify the number of voters who are making up for the ones that are staying home because they're haughty, stuck-up bitches like Bill Kristol or Rich Lowry or the other types that just can't get past the Access Hollywood comments and things like that. Those are going to be how determining where we need to go is what Parscale's working on. I mean, he is really out there from the analytic standpoint, trying to see where things are moving in Pennsylvania, in Ohio, in Michigan, in Wisconsin. If we don't keep our eye on the economic messages reverberating through the Rust Belt, we're not going to get reelected. There is no path. There is no path. I mean, we can lose Pennsylvania and win. We cannot lose Pennsylvania and Michigan and win. And we certainly cannot win without Wisconsin, Michigan, or Pennsylvania, one of the three. There's certainly, with Nevada slipping, Colorado is slipping, having to put so many resources just to hold on to Arizona. There's certainly not a lot of states out there where we can try to plant our flag where we didn't have it in 2016. So we got to cultivate that message. That's going to what's harder than getting somebody to vote when they haven't voted in a long time? Getting them to fucking vote 2 times in a row.
2 times in a row.
Exactly. And that is what Trump is facing. That's what his team is facing. I know here in PA, I'm not sure what's going on in Florida, but in PA, there's been a little bit of a kumbaya session between the state GOP, a recognition between the state GOP and the Trump campaign that, hey, there was a deliberate divide last time between the GOP and the RNC, Pat Toomey's campaign, and Trump's campaign. And we can't have that in 2020. We can't do it. So there's this, Val DeGiorgio, the chair here, has made like an outreach, a plan that he submitted to Trump's campaign. And I think other states are going to probably do this if they haven't already. Florida wasn't so bad. There was, of course, a lot of divergence between Rubio resources and Trump resources. Certainly nothing as divisive as it was in North Carolina. It was in Wisconsin, where we had in Pennsylvania, it's totally separate Senate races against the president's interest. There was an assumption that Trump was dead meat and they had to hold and preserve everything for themselves. So, I mean, looking forward, I think that, McConnell has a lot of flesh in this game. He needs to set it up where there's another big legislative victory moving forward, going into 2020. They all need to set it up where the economy is on the right track. Making concessions to the Chinese when we have a sky high, record high, $323 billion surplus for the Chinese in trade. Settling or giving concessions now in the short-term gain to keep the stock market up or keep the Dow and the Nasdaq and the S&P artificially up. This is not the time to do that. Because we're still a year and a half away from when we need to ensure that there is no recession on the horizon, and there are actually we need to do something to have in the pipeline to make sure that we're infusing a bump next summer, that somehow something is freed up in the economy, because there are, new wealth is even harder to create than new voters. And where is it going to come from? Manufacturing sector jobs is what Trump promised. It's what he's working on. It's also the sector that takes the most time, effort, and money to grow back. It's something that Obama thought he got rid of in America, but has been coming back slowly but surely.
Yeah, he did. And one of the last economic pieces under Obama that we did was about the manufacturing sector being on life support. I don't know, another 4 years of Obama, I don't know where we'd be, but there's already a case to be made there with Trump that that manufacturing is doing well. And we're talking about a complete reversal in the trend, mining and resources, same thing. That was negative under Obama almost the entire time. So that as well. But again, a month, 2 months, 3 months in politics is a long time. So you'd want something in the summer, an announcement about a trade deal being made, whatever it may be. U.S., a peace process would help stabilize the global concerns. But right now, the Chinese let Lighthizer do what he's doing. I think honestly he's got a pretty good grip on this, and I don't want to blow it right now. But I think they're taking the right tactics. One of our biggest problems with the Chinese in the past is we don't know how to be patient. We don't know how to wait and play the game that they wait.
And they know it.
And they do. And they know it. And they love it. And they'll call somebody like Ron Johnson, to drive a wedge, but Trump has been dealing with them for a long time, and I think he's got the right people there for once. Give them the leeway that they need and let them do what they need to do. Just from what we've been hearing, I think they got the upper hand in this thing, Adam. I don't want to, like I said,
Yeah.
I don't want to shoot it yet, but I think they got the upper hand in this thing. I think the Chinese know it. They know they're not dealing with the same person this time, the same kind of people, and they don't have the luxury that they used to have. Yeah, anything that comes out of the statistics that come out of that government, you can just go ahead and slash it. It's safe to assume you could probably slash it almost in half. If they're growing by 6%, they're not. They have some
Well,
problems.
6% is the lowest since the WTO, basically
Since the deal.
favored their
Right.
existence, and they have been given sweetheart deals for the last 20 years, and they have grown. We've made money off of them. Okay,
Right.
everybody makes money off of China, and when you contract China's markets, you contract your own investment opportunities, and it rolls back into your own economic profile. Now, what people are confused about is just because the market would take a tumble based on some stalemate with China, that's based on our assumption that there'll be retail index increases because Chinese products are going to become more expensive as tariffs take place. In reality, we should be buying American. And I think that Trump is giving a prelude right now to another run of intense patriotic buy American style politics, which is what he has to do moving forward. Not only fight China, but to instill into the American public, just like the Chinese do. When the Chinese say, don't buy an Apple phone right now because these motherfuckers are screwing us over right now, everybody drops. The Apple phone goes down 20%. The stock drops a couple $100 billion overnight because those motherfuckers are trained to listen to their government. Over here, we don't give a shit. We are abused. Apple sent the jobs over there so that I could buy this fucking iPhone for $600 instead of $6,000. An iPhone produced in America without cheap Chinese labor would roughly be $6,000 to $7,000 as opposed to $600 to $700. Get that around your head and let it sink in. This is a problem. We have to find that delicate balance so that we have a long-term economic plan. You're dead on. Xi is made himself leader for life, as they want to do in the Chinese culture. They like that road to one China philosophy. It will take an eon to do it. They don't give a shit.
They don't care. Right.
And we have a 4-year election cycle for the president over here. They know it. They're willing to try to run the clock out on Trump. And whatever they can do to exert financial leverage over Trump between now and November 2020, they're going to use it. And they are really, to their own detriment, they will use it. That's an Asian philosophy that goes back a long time.
Absolutely.
Trump has to hold down the fort right now. He cannot make concessions. Lighthouser is definitely a ruthless son of a bitch. He's doing his job. Navarro's at the table. Kudlow is explaining to the public through the press the best he can why we're doing the things that we are. And now there may be like 100 people in here watching us right now, but there are probably 700 people watching a Periscope about Roger Stone getting arrested in his underwear. Let me tell you, people out there, which is more likely to be influential to the re-election efforts of Donald Trump in 2020. It ain't gonna be about Roger Stone. It ain't gonna be about Jerome Corsi. It's not going to be about the Mueller report, which will be an index of process crimes, none related directly to the President of the United States. So this Dog and Pony show is wrapping up. William Barr will get his vote as soon as we get this shutdown thing. William Barr will have his vote before the next shutdown issue deadline, and that it will take care of a lot of the Mueller issues.
For the I got to charge this up, by the way, but for the the Mueller, for the end game for Robert Mueller to have happened the way they wanted it to, Adam, they needed the Senate. They really needed a true wave, not an artificial one. They needed a true wave, and they just didn't get it. So I think that's also important for people to understand. You and I, we were trying to tell people for over a year that these crazy ideas that somehow Robert Mueller and Trump had like a secret handshake on the on the low, that was all nonsense. But they did, for Democrats to have gotten their best case scenario out of Robert Mueller, that election would have needed to have gone a different way, and it did not.
Mhm.
So, we were just talking about getting their butt kicked in the House, but in the Senate, Arizona, if Sinema did not eke out Arizona, you would have to go back to FDR in 32, I think, I think it's 32 for a first term incumbent president's party to gain that many seats in the upper chamber in their first term.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
so again, context matters. And now because they got two, you have to go back to 1960. So even still, we're only talking about 2 seats, but it matters because history is what it is on these things. And it's the strongest driving force.
And if you don't know history, you're a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, if you don't know history, you can't
platitude.
give a really intelligent perspective on what has happened recently or will happen not too far in the distance right now, because the major problem I see on Twitter is that these people have forsaken the intellectual avenue that are available to them because they're not sexy and flashy enough. But I don't do that. I don't get into the clickbait shit. You don't get into the clickbait shit. And that's why guys like us will just have this organically grown following that'll jump a couple of thousand here and we'll reach a nexus and stop. It's not something that governs or dictates what my message is, which is
That's
only
right.
about what I see. And it's distilled through a tactic which can only be explained as experience. It literally goes through layers in the distilling process in my brain based on my experience in government, politics, all the races I've ever been involved in, everything that I've ever studied when I was in college and gotten out and performed. And that's what builds up my perspective. And similar in your cases. And you have the polling, which you're watching, and it becomes about empiricism to you as opposed to anecdotal fucking bullshit.
Right.
We'd have to put a flashing red siren on our Periscope, and we would have to say that 30,000 pedophiles are on their way to Gitmo in order to get the audience share of Twitter. Now, this isn't real life. I mean, maybe about 10 to 20 million tops Republican voters actually legitimately are swayed by what they see on Twitter and Facebook. I mean, really, it's are they available? Are they on there? Yes. Are they political animals that know who the fuck Lee Stranahan is? Or Mike Cernovich? Or,
Right.
I mean, if I go out or you go out and we decide we're going to poll and find out what that name ID is on Mike Cernovich, we're going to get about 0.8 to 1%. Maybe.
Yeah, it's small. It's small because we like to think of this stuff too when we're on Twitter. We like to think, and I get this a lot, with Ron DeSantis. He wound up pulling it out in the end, but he was in trouble there for a while.
Hell yeah, he was.
People didn't want to hear that from me, Adam. You remember that? They didn't want to hear that. But Twitter is not the electorate as a whole, And to me, I think what it comes down to is some people are about sensationalism, and some people are about and gaining those. It's about hits. It's about followers. Look at Ben in BuzzFeed last week almost 2 weeks ago now.
Mm-hmm.
That's the race to be first, and it's it might build up your Twitter follower, but going to destroy your brand in the end. So
yeah,
it's I guess if you wanted to apply it to journalists, it's better to be right than to be first. But the incentives that are in place now, unfortunately, and it's the same thing with polling. Used to be a big media outlet. They hire a pollster. That pollster's incentive was to be right because they didn't want to look like fools, and they wanted the outlet to hire them the next election cycle. Yeah. That's not the incentive anymore. Everybody wants to fit in with the same, and they want what's the word I'm looking for? But it's almost a very childlike, immature dynamic, where they'd rather be invited to the club, Adam, than to be right, And for me, it's always been more important to be right than to be patted on the back by people who may share my views, or may not. Yeah. But it seems like that's what they're looking for, almost like a gratification instead of professional validation. that I've done the right thing. I told people what I thought was my best, or what
Yep.
which I got lucky. It was my best. It's a little bit more than luck, but
Well, absolutely. I mean, the polling.
it was tough
the,
to
the, the
stick that
argument
out.
the argument I get back all the time from people is when we discussed during the midterms, we were discussing some of the pitfalls that we were looking at, and other issues about polling and where indicators were a problem. Overwhelming, the Twitter responses to these are, "Oh yeah, polling, like that was right in 2016. Oh yeah, you must be the new Nate Silver. Congratulations on
Yeah.
being wrong." No, you don't really understand two things here. One is that no poll is going to be perfect because it's not designed to be perfect. It is a snapshot, the best you can possibly encapsulate a moment in time in a geographical place and time, and then apply it in aggregate and hope that you are applying it correctly with the right, exponents to come up with something that makes sense in the overall product. Now, Nate Silver, who the misnomer is that Nate Silver is a pollster.
He's a poll reader, a glorified poll reader. He does not
poll aggregate machine. And what
right.
the statistic, the algorithms that are in play there are mainly crunches of what we talked about before. What they do is they put into a sausage grinder all available polling that they have, publicly and privately. And they take historical parameters like you and I have discussed about what typically happens, and then they take all the Secretary of States around the country expected turnout numbers, and they rotate all this shit into a magical algorithm that produces a hard number. The same way they do predictive analytics for sporting events. It's no different. If they're going to predict the Super Bowl winner, they're going to take all the games that the Patriots and Rams have played this year and the year before and the year before, and they're going to crunch them all together with every Super Bowl that's been occurred and the indoors versus the outdoors and blah, blah, blah. And it'll crunch out a number based purely on what is out there. That's what Nate Silver does. Nate Silver was telling you the percentage chance Hillary was going to be president predicated on what he saw in history, turnout availability, predictions, and the polling that was available to him. Right? So stop using. I'm not defending Nate Silver. Nate Silver, I think, is basically one of the most overpaid, overthought of circus, acts out there. I really think that's all it is. And I'm just trying to get people out of this, cognitive mode that they think they're in when they say that all polls are wrong. And listen, we can take a poll. We can look at how the poll is weighted. We can look at the data points and see where they've oversampled gender or party or whatever, or turnout expectation.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Now, we can do that and still come up with useful information out of every poll that is conducted, provided we can see more than just a top sheet. So people need to understand there's value in every poll taken. And I explained to them, and I'm sure you tried to as well, in the midterm, we can't poll every goddamn district. That was 100. At one point, there were like 140 districts that could have gone one way or the other, lean to.
No joke.
Who the fuck's paying you? And in your case,
not
a lot of times people want your information, but they don't necessarily.
They sure want the polling, though. They sure want the polling, and that's.
And I think that's got to change.
That's got to, yeah.
My point leading up to this wasn't just to bemoan all this thing.
Don't dismiss the polls outright.
Don't dismiss them outright.
Yeah.
They're all useful in their own way, but they are mostly, if they're paid for, they are meant to get a certain read out there, or they won't put them out there. I mean, if I commission you to do a poll I don't want out there, you don't release the poll. I don't release the poll. That's the way it goes. And that's our right. I'm still paying you, and you're still taking it. We haven't had to do that because everything we pulled together turned out to be pretty accurate. I'm still, hung up on the 48th in California. I don't like it. Something smells rotten beyond advanced canvassing.
I agree.
Something didn't add up in a lot of those races out there in California that I think if we give the proper amount of due diligence next time, and I believe we can win a majority of those Orange County seats back. And as long as we're keeping an eye on them, that should be something that's doable. But you can't do it out of a gratuity notion of loyalty to what? To who? I mean, not to sound like,
the public good, the public interest.
Exactly.
I don't know what people would think.
Ricky Waters here, but for who? For what? I mean, really? Right. I mean, I may be doing a lot of stuff out of blind loyalty to the mission of America First and making America great again, based on Trump. I mean, that what has me in my office in the middle of the day discussing this stuff with you. Um, it's not a financial consideration. I can tell you that in a large part. It is because we chose to start up the MAGA coalition so that we could discuss and keep in the forefront any way possible how hard it is to get these policy initiatives put through and to kind of defend the president when people are ignorant and don't understand why things have borne out the way that they have been borne out. So before I let you go, real briefly, let's give the conspiracy monkeys out there something to chew on. Let's throw a banana to the conspiracy monkeys. No specific reference to Mike Cernovich, but let's discuss this notion that it's realistic to use all these process crimes to impugn the president of the United States. If you're Robert Mueller and you are now arrested, as he predicted a year ago you would,
Right.
Roger Stone, and it appears to be, reading the indictment, yet another delineation of process crimes.
Yep.
So before you leave us, please go ahead and tell us what you think this will amount to: a hill of beans or a mountain of trouble.
Well, if there was going to be a point where somebody would start composing, so Roger Stone, you'll hear him again tonight on Tucker. I know what he's going to say. Robert Mueller is trying to scare people and has been doing this, trying to scare people and squeeze them to the point where they just make stuff up. I mean, that's really he doesn't care. Neither does Andrew Weissman. I don't see anything here, Adam, unless there's something that we haven't heard about, or you and I. And I mean, there's at this point, every time a FISA revelation comes out, Robert Mueller indicts another process crime. It's just a game at this point. I don't see, and again, especially because of how the election went, in November, their really best shot was political to get Trump to get rid of him. The SDNY is obviously they're going to try to make a big case out of that. But I mean, now we have Michael Cohen as a convicted and admitted liar. I mean, so really, if this is all they got, then Trump's just gonna the voters will decide the fate of Donald Trump, and that's it. That's what I see this as. Unless again, there's something we don't know about and haven't been told over now what is 2 years almost. They recirculate and rebrand some of these charges and allegations. We even saw that today with Roger Stone. But you can call it witness tampering and make it sound terrible. He simply asked somebody he was talking to make sure their stories lined up. But they call that witness tampering. But in reality, that may get a lot of spin on MSNBC. And they'll have fun talking about that for the next week. But in reality, that's not enough to remove an unsitting to unseat a sitting president. So where we're at right now in this investigation, and because I do like you, if there was something that could get him on it, they would try. But I think in the end, Donald Trump, his fate will be decided by voters at the ballot box.
And I think it'll come down to the economy, and it won't come down to semantics on border security or other things like that. And if you choose, the voter to, you don't think steel slats are as good as a concrete wall, and that's good enough for you to sit home on, we're not counting on that. Let me tell you right now, Richard and I will tell you right to your Twitter face that if you tell us that you're not going to vote for Trump because you didn't vote for a steel slat, you voted for a concrete wall, and you're going to stay home in 2020. Guess what? We don't fucking believe you.
We don't believe you.
We don't believe you, and we will count you in again, as far as our numbers are concerned, for re-elect.
We've been hearing this for years, cycle after cycle, and that's especially true of Republicans, by the way. I mean, in the end, when it comes down to their nominee, they will hear whoever gets the nomination, and it will be, I don't know about you, but I expect it to be somebody who's pretty much far to the left at this point. I'm not sure a moderate, and that's really sad that we're in this position in this country now. And it's not even really a two-party, and it's not the same as Republican versus Democrat as what it used to be in the past. That party has really gone to the left.
Well, I don't want to lose this point. I want to say to you, on that line, I want your expert opinion. New Hampshire and Iowa, um, getting together as voters first in those two states in particular, where they run the gamut, but at the end, they tend to go for a more populist style candidate. Um, what do you? I mean, I see that as a disadvantage to the progressive movement that they must jockey for position first in New Hampshire and Iowa, and that is because you come out of there dead in the water, and it's very hard to get resuscitated. And when you have 30 fucking people, and you got to come out in the top 10 in order to, retain life as fundraising. You're in New Hampshire and Iowa. Getting in there and talking about giving everybody a salary or a stipend just to live by the federal government, and getting rid of ICE as an agency, fighting against the notion of any border wall or fencing, and talking about taxing everybody that's a millionaire to the rate of 75 to 80, 90% or whatever they're doing. I think that's a tough row to hoe if you're not already established like Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. I think it's gonna be tough for a lot of these progressive types who want to make their way up the food chain dealing with New Hampshire and Iowa.
If you're Hillary Clinton, you have to be thinking, I'm serious. I'm serious. I know she
And
wants
I
to be
think she
president,
is.
but you know what I'm talking about,
Oh
because
yeah.
he needed somebody to be. The party right now needs somebody who's palatable to the general public, because, like you said, that these early states, they're going to be dominated by the Warrens, and it's going to be a race to see who can give away the most for nothing and who can be the craziest. I mean, I've seen in the last week people apologize for positions. I just never in a million years would have thought somebody like Kirsten Gillibrand. She came up, and that's my neck of the woods. She was a very, I don't want to use it's not moderate. It's not even a right word. She was a conservative Democrat in upstate New York who came up and completely changed as she made her way in Washington over the political year. But now they have her backed into such a corner because, of course, she wants to compete in those early states. They have her backed in such a corner where she's apologizing for policies that actually may be attractive to a general election voter.
Yeah.
So, it's going to be entertaining to watch. But I think I see the Democrats making the same mistake I saw Republicans making in 2010, where they took a midterm, which is anybody like you or I could have told them, you're going to do well. That's history.
Yeah.
You're going to do well. They took that as an affirmation that the country agrees with their party, their platform, their God, their creed, everything. And, and I guess, that 60% of the public must identify as a Republican. And then come 2012, they were completely blindsided by the loss, by Mitt Romney's loss. They really never.
Well, I mean, who did we pick? Who did we pick? In hindsight, we picked the one guy that you couldn't galvanize the healthcare people behind, because he was the author of the sole universal care bill in the United States before anybody. New York, California,
before anyone.
Massachusetts did it. He was the fucking author of it. So we managed to really fuck ourselves hard, because that was a winnable election. Why was it a winnable election? Because of the uncertainty of the healthcare bill, certainly, but the economics were not good. We had quantitative easing at its height. We had almost no interest rates because we couldn't. We were still barely recovered from the fallout of 2008, and we should have won that on economic considerations alone. And we put up and nominated Mitt Romney, which caused us invariably we were going to lose, and we did.
And this is why I think Trump is honestly still, all sitting presidents are the favorites, unless, of course, I'm talking about all things being equal. Sitting presidents should be the favorite. But something Donald Trump has that is hard to combat is Mitt Romney lost. People didn't think he cared. He cared about them. They viewed him as a plutocrat. They at least said, I think Obama cares about me. And that matters to people. They can not like you, but if they think that you don't like them, then that's it. Donald Trump, a lot of people, big, large chunks, big percentages, never liked him. But yet they told us every night in tracking that they were going to vote for him because they thought he was the better man for the job and that he was being honest and he cared. Maybe they didn't say it in the best way, but when he talks about trade, his concern for trade, they believed him. And they thought he genuinely did care about the worker. And that's something that they're they are going to have a problem with. And I know I've
Yeah.
seen some polls that are here and there, but our research is still pretty clear. Most of the country still thinks Donald Trump is the guy to have in the economic driver's seat. And most of the country still thinks that he may be bombastic and I don't like his style, but he is genuine. And that's hard to punch through. So when people see a 37, 38% favorability rating, they get scared if they support Donald Trump, and they start to salivate if they oppose him. And that's what we're going to take him out. It has always been like that.
Yeah.
And in the battleground states, it's always looked a little better. But he won the state of Michigan with 41% favorability rating. That was the highest he ever got in our poll. And we were the only one to call that state right. Even the other poll that I hear mentioned a lot, they didn't really call it right because the margin was a little off, but they called the winner right. But when we pulled that state, Minnesota, by the way, I think that is one he could target and flip. Same even with Iowa, he won by 9 points. I think maybe Iowa's, I don't have it in front of me, but that was one of the higher states, but maybe a 43% favorability. But that's a challenge Democrats will have, because even though they don't like him personally, they still will vote for him because they still think he's the right man, that they can trust him.
Yeah, particularly in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, it is going to be an empirical study for every voter going to the booth. Is my wallet better off now than it was
That's right.
in 2016? If not, I'm not going to vote, or I may even vote for somebody else. It is not a personal connection that won us those states. It was a trade message that won those 3 states. These are Rust Belt states that live off of manufacturing sectors and die off of them. So it's very important. These are 3 states. I agree with you on Minnesota. I'm also I hedge it on Minnesota because Klobuchar's ratings are so fucking high that it's going to be an interesting dynamic to come in here and see one of the most popular senators and have a president beat out that message statewide. Minnesota still possible. You got to target somewhere, and I think you got to target Minnesota because it's the same argument can win you will not cost you Colorado and could put Minnesota in your column. And I think we can't totally disown Colorado. I don't think we can totally disown Virginia, although that's going to be a really steep fucking climb, particularly shutting off the government for 30 days and pissing off everybody who works out of that. But there's only so many states to turn to, and we cannot turn our backs on Iowa. I mean, that is going to be a razor thin margin there. So what I'm going to try to do is have you on with me once every couple of weeks. We've been talking about doing this forever. It took today's news for me to finally get my ass off the chair and do that with you. I want to let people know that if you're not following Richard Baris, you can find him by searching Richard Baris, obviously, but he is at PPD News. It has nothing to do with Planned Parenthood. Don't think that for a second. It's People's Pundit. People's Pundit Daily is how he goes by, and it's at Big Data Poll. You can also see all this on his page at Big Data Poll. Follow his lovely bride Laura. That is on there as well. So just stop by there. At my Twitter page, there's the link when I said we were going to be doing this podcast together. Stop by, follow Richard for the love of freaking God. Go to People's Pundit Daily News and subscribe to it so that you can figure out what the fuck's going on without listening to the mainstream media. So Richard, I want to thank you for doing this. I'm going to go on for a little while, and I'm going to let you jump off and give your bride a nice hug from me.
I will do. All the best. I'll talk to you guys soon, all right?
All right. See you, Richard. It'll have a little button that says leave. Just click on it, leave. Yeah. If Glenn can jump back on at some point, that'd be great. I'll try to answer some questions that I didn't get around to. There's probably still about 80, 90 people in here. Yeah, it looks like 115 or so. So I'll try to get to the Q&A portion of this. Anyway, please follow Richard Baris. He's just a longtime friend of mine, and one of the more, let me just say, beyond trustworthy. He actually has integrity in polling, and finding a pollster with integrity is really, really hard to do. It's one, when you find one, hold on to it like grim death. And that's what I've done, and that's what the MAGA coalition has done. We only trust one person, one pollster to do our polling, and that is Richard Baris and his firm. So now I will answer some of your questions. You've probably heard me get around to the point earlier in this broadcast, but if Glenn would be so generous to allow us a little more time with his production skills, I will soldier on here and answer any specific question you might have. There he is. Or if you saw any, Glenn, that I missed, feel free to shoot that out, and I will answer it. It seems to be a lot of attention, undue amount of attention is getting paid to the Roger Stone debacle here, and I'm not really concerned. I mean, I like Roger. I think he's being unfairly. I think he's more persecuted than prosecuted at this point. With the entire indictment is 7 pages or so of bullshit and process crimes, and he said, she said. Be assured of one thing: the cheese provided was provided by the rat Bannon. Bannon has given, I don't know how much to Mueller to corroborate some of these charges to get the process crimes against Stone. If you ever liked Steve Bannon, now's your final moment where you realize you were totally screwed and lied to, and go back and listen to me a year and a half ago when I told you he was a rat. Now that the shutdown has been resolved temporarily, I fully expect William Barr to have a final vote prior to the deadline of February 15th. I think that's some business we want to get out of the way. So I've long expected him to be in the first week of February. Let's see if that holds up. Now that we have the shutdown out of the way, it gives Barr a chance to get into the floor motions. Do you think Trump was threatened with a veto? Trump is the one who vetoes, so I don't know why he would threaten himself with a veto. Is there any way for Trump to build a wall where needed? Yeah, obviously he's doing it right now. It's not like we're not building anything down there. We already have a couple billion underway already, and certainly he can reallocate some appropriated funds in the executive branch and do that without declaring the emergency. But I think that the expectation is, provided he doesn't get what he wants by February 15th, he will declare the national emergency before allowing the government to stay open on February 16th. So he didn't by any means lose that tool in the toolbox. Marino didn't want to run, Scott, so we forced him to, because we had enough problems already with the new districts that were drawn in PA. So Marino is leaving, and Marino not only has family issues, health issues, but he has his own health issues. He has had kidney cancer scares twice. So I think that he wanted out, and we have a thoroughly winnable special election. No concerns there. State of the Union, I imagine, is back on. And if I'm not mistaken, that date was what? The 29th or something? January 29th, Tuesday, next week. Glenn, what do you think of Richard's appearance? Think it's something we should do once a month or so? Yeah, well, I wanted you on here now because sometimes I miss questions, and some people had something to say, and you might have been reading, and I lost my internet connection totally. So I had to pull off Wi-Fi just to view the remainder of the scope. So I got to find out what the hell happened there. Looks like it's back on now, but for about 30 minutes I didn't have it at all. So Glenn, Glenn has no sound because he doesn't want you to hear him, probably.
There we go. Now people should be able to hear me.
Wow, you should have heard what Glenn just said about all of you. It was rough. I'm glad that you didn't have to hear that.
Yeah, they can hear me now. I have
have
multiple
just
mute buttons here, and one of them is behind a laptop screen, so I couldn't see it was on.
Okay, well, that's good. The other reason I wanted you to appear is because I did not get a chance to bother you guys while you were on fire last night, but I did want to say that I enjoyed you basically doing what appeared to be a rain dance outside of a burning hotel. with many dead bodies inside in celebratory nature, which I thoroughly enjoyed because the bodies inside there, hypothetically speaking, all deserve to be burned down in that motel of hell and called YBA. I wanted to congratulate MNN for its role in calling out traitors of all kinds and suggest that we do dust it off occasionally, as you mentioned, in order to pay special attention to the grifters and the total backstabbing, lackeys thereof that are comprised of people that are seeking a dime and a dollar over doing what's best for the president and frankly for the country, overstating their value and their worth to humanity, of course, but they are just abject personalities that deserve to be called out. I think that MNN is a useful tool of which to execute them publicly.
Well, I mean, it got to the point where I couldn't ignore the fact that the president had called out Vandersteel and company directly.
Yeah, that's hard to get.
Oh, now I can't. Hold on a second, Adam. 1 second, please. Let's try again. Nothing. That's okay. I turned it off. Everything was going so swimmingly. Are you there, Adam?
Yeah.
Okay. So it got to the point where I thought that the takedown of the conservative treehouse's takedown of the Vandersteel, grifting antics was sufficient for me to say, mission accomplished. But I never would even entertain the idea that the president himself at some point might get involved with this. This is basically a low-level con artist. But it seems to me that if you're going to go out into the public and push an idea that you are somehow working for the president, eventually you're going to get called out. This White House, it seems to me this White House, it may take them some time to cast their glance into the lower echelons, of the substrata. But, that bell that tolls, it will eventually toll for thee. And, and Ann Vandersteel, I think, found out the hard way that just because you're a lichen on the rock face, way, way, way down in the ravine, that the eagle eye of the White House will be unable to see you? No, wrong. I think she asked for it. She got it. Toyota,
Well, you knew that they're eventually going to overplay their hand to the point where, somebody is going to zing you. And it's hard to do though, because that's like a Trump advisory board now, which was a pathetic peon of a media advisory board made up just to keep Gina busy after the election. There was nobody on there. I mean, Bruce Lavelle was on for a couple of weeks, then he just jumped off because it was really nothing and there was no point to it. And then, they started to build it up to an advisory board. And she somehow decided to, because she knows who Mark Serrano is, and Serrano obviously is on the board and is the spokesman of the board. And he's a former Bush staffer who is a surrogate, a paid surrogate, basically for the campaign. It has been since 2016. So she tried to suck him into that world, the Julio world of fun, a long time ago. And before Mitchell decided that he no longer wanted anything to do with us, you were set to produce a show with myself, Mark Serrano, and Neil. What the hell is his
deGrasse,
name?
Something like that.
No. The what the hell is that guy's name? Another surrogate who's on Fox all the time. I can't remember his name now. He's got like a brother who's an asshole. Anyway, I'll remember it later. So, Mark obviously knows who Ann is. He's personally met with her several times, and he knows who Bill Mitchell is. So this poor bastard, along with, I'm sure Gina's help, suckered. But it's really that operation is so large to get them to step on an ant on another continent is really difficult to do. Getting them to use the Daily Beast in order to go to another continent to step on an ant is even fucking harder to do. And I think that was the point maybe some people missed last night that you were making. Getting the Daily Beast, which you won't even utter their name correctly. So, I mean, this is like a step above BuzzFeed, which is like a step above raw sewage. I mean, it's, getting any Trump arm of the campaign to respond to Daily Beast is absolutely the most remarkable rebuke that is possible.
I mean,
it is stunning.
It's a nothing. These are like nothing publications, even though they publish nothing technically, right? It's all electronic, but it's like an ant waving its fist at an elephant. That's what this Daily Beast and the rightwingwatch.com. This is like the lower echelons of obscurity. But that said, I think it shows a great deal of finesse, here in the second year of the Trump presidency, that they're able to leverage these nothing left-wing properties for the benefit of the White House. To me, that shows a level of sophistication that wasn't there when he took office in 2017.
No, you're right, because it's a two-part scenario here. One, getting them to do this is it's like notifying the CDC that there is a mosquito with West Nile virus somewhere in the state of Florida.
Yeah.
And you're asking the CDC to send out a team to go down and identify said mosquito. It is a little bit hard to find. In case you haven't been to the Everglades, there's a lot of fucking mosquitoes there. That is essentially what Ann Vandersteel is in the large scheme of things. In the grand scheme of things, politically speaking, she is just the smallest, most minute irritant, a pest, an insect. To get the CDC to go down there and do this is very difficult. To get the CDC to hire George Soros to fund it would be an even larger expedition of craziness. The fact that they answered the Daily Beast, I mean, nobody from the Trump campaign would ever answer the Daily Beast. It would always be no comment, or nothing, or no response. The fact that the Daily Beast was dogged enough to follow this story for 40 days.
Well, that's
the only way.
Look, that's their rendition of how it went down, right?
Well, I'm sure it was, Glenn, because for 40 days they were ignored.
Well, but I think that's business as usual. It's the ant with the fist of the elephant. That every fucking story that they've had for the last 3 years is ignored.
But here's the thing: the Daily Beast did
until this
every time they wanted to comment, they would send another video clip, probably put together by the Right Wing Watch or whatever, and they would continue to send this shit. And finally, somebody, probably Mark himself, is sitting there watching a video between Ann and Bill Mitchell, where Ann says, as you quoted last night correctly, and Ginger did as well, 80% of the world's politicians, 80% world politicians, are pedophiles. And Bill, stunned as usual when somebody basically throws a lap of crazy on him, says back to Ann, well, mostly Democrats.
Right.
That's his retort. Mostly Democrats. How the fuck? I mean, it reminds me of the Ron Burgundy line, from Paul Rudd. Hey, this is the Black Panther cologne. It works 100% of the time, 60% of the time, right? That doesn't fucking make any sense.
Right.
80% of the world's politicians. Well, there's only one Democrat Party of the United States of America, not the fucking world. And now 80% of the politicians, if that wasn't the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life, 80% of the world's politicians are pedophiles. The second dumbest thing I've ever heard is most are Democrats.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like two total moronic idiots who have hit the depths of depravity so low that it is not possible to satire their stupidity. No one in the realm of the right-wing watch or the Act Blue crowd or anybody in Will Sommer's world of the Daily Beast could ever conceive of something so fucking stupid as that conversation.
Well,
they could not satire this.
You could say that the left loves to recharacterize or put words in the mouths that never came out of people on the right. But in the case of Mill Bitchell and these and the you know, the urchins that surround him, they're writing the best material that Right Wing Watch or the Daily Beast or the Huffington Post could ever throw out there to disparage the intelligence of Trump supporters. It's not being rewritten by them. The high quality shit is being provided by Mill Bitchell himself and his cohorts of stupidity. And it is embarrassing. And you know what? They like to say that, you're splitting the MAGA movement or whatever. You know, fuck the MAGA movement. If it means that I have to tolerate this kind of, you know, raw sewage being poured out and I have to pretend that this is something serious, then fuck it. I want no part of that. And anyway, it's not me and you that keep flip-flopping on every major issue for the last 2 years. It's not us. It's their stupidity, and they can slow walk it right up their motherfucking asses, as far as I'm concerned with this shit. And by the way, you've been called out, bitches. You've been called out by the president. So don't give me this crap. If you had any self-respect, you'd go away.
It's impressive, though. It's not just impressive that, you know, the actual arm of the campaign disassociated themselves on a pretty clear, emphatically permanent basis from Ann and by extension Bill. But the fact that they did so to such an insignificant quality of the YVA stamp shows that just because Bill can still tweet deck his way to 47,000 views makes them enough of a problem, a nuisance, a mosquito with West Nile virus that they can go out of their way to swat and kill. But that's the inherent danger. To your point, what's more damaging? A cold opening on SNL making fun of the president for being a white supremacist, or an actual interview conducted by two self-proclaimed Trump people talking about 80% of the world's politicians being pedophiles? That is organic satire that can be utilized instantaneously by the Daily Beast and the Right Wing Watch and others to get out onto Twitter and permanently lend itself into the ink pool of this is your Trump supporting, you know, base. This is your base right here, Mr. President. That is far more damaging. Even the fact that no one in their right mind knows who the fuck Bill Mitchell and Ann Vandersteel are. The fact that they can put that shit out there and be consumed by 50,000 people is enough of a concern to have the actual campaign disassociate themselves from it. Get this, Glenn. They disassociated from Ann Vandersteel before they disassociated from Q. That alone should tell you something about the enormity of her idiocy.
Yes.
If it wasn't enough to disassociate from a martial law backing, civil rights robbing, crazy ass JFK Jr.'s Alive group, you went and disassociated first from Ann Vandersteel. And mark my words, the disassociation from Q is forthcoming. It's just sadly going to be postponed until someone dies.
Yeah.
Someone is killed in the name of Q.
And that's probably coming because the group that is involved with Q is getting very much smaller but more radical. They're purifying to just the anyway. It's hard to talk to Q people. It's hard to talk to Nazis for the same reason. All these type of it's like talking to a drunkard. Trying, you know, someone who's extremely intoxicated and you've taken their keys, and and you have to have the same conversation with them like 18 times in a row until they just pass out because they keep forgetting what you're saying. Where are my keys? Dude, I'm hooking you up. I'm going to drive you home. Yeah. Okay, thanks, man. Then you wait 10 seconds. Where's my keys? And it's the same conversation. Yeah. We've all been there, right? Over and over and over, the same fucking conversation. And eventually he's like, where's my... And he falls asleep.
Pass out.
And that's a small mercy that he's asleep. You don't have to have the 19th version of the same conversation. I feel like that's been my life with these assholes. I'm having the same conversation with people who don't want to hear it. They have like an emotional need to like Bill Mitchell and Vandersteel. I know that those people are scum. And now it doesn't matter. You don't like me. You think I'm a mean guy. I got a foul mouth, whatever. Great. But the president of the United States, with all my foibles that they've lied about me. Tried to get someone to kill themselves. Bullshit. Not true. But anyway, you can believe it if you want. But the president of the United States has never called me a liar. And he's never used a left-wing publication to disseminate that. So, keep following these idiots, guys. Keep following these idiots. You are basically the Ocasio-Cortez of our side. You are a walking embarrassment. Eventually, Nancy Pelosi is going to step on that woman. You know it. If she can get a little power and she can feel a little stronger that the crazies aren't going to string her up, she's going to humiliate that woman in some way to shut her up.
And it'll be in private, and it'll be very, very, very thorough.
Yeah.
Listen, she's only second to Trump overall in Twitter interactions. This is what you call a meteoric rise. However, Trump did not build his following overnight. I mean, we're talking about 9-10 years of, active tweeting.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. There is a real chance. The Ginger has already commented that, she follows this stuff much more closely than I, that some guy killed his brother. There's already been a death, at least loosely attributed to the Q phenomenon, which is just crazy. I can't even get my mind around that. But there's going to be something more serious, I'm sure. More serious than the guy walking into the Comet pizza shop and, firing off an AR-15 round into the floor, headed to where there's no basement. I mean, it's probably more public than the Q guy that went on to the dam and blocked the thoroughfare, claiming something about
that was
whatever
amusing.
The fuck he was claiming.
He was claiming,
going to be something.
He was claiming some nonsense, which is what you'd expect, right?
Yeah,
we had one of these.
The only thing to come out of Q is the creation of new wealth by people like Tracy Beans and Praying Medic. And Coleman Rogers and his wife, they all have new houses, new cars, and it was all paid for by the moronic tendencies of people, and most of them are boomers. And I think that's the most hurtful thing in this whole argument, is that it's the boomers that are biting into this. It's the same boomers that were the people that bit into every fake news story that was put on Facebook. They're gravitating and migrating over from Facebook in hordes over the last year to Twitter in hopes of finding some secret conspiracy that only so many people understand or know, because they don't trust the media like everybody else, and they want to believe something is actually changing or happening, and they're old and they're confused.
Well, it's a generation bereft of belief in God. And I remember when I was younger, they said, if you don't believe in God, you'll probably fall for anything. Every individual needs that center, some kind of center in the spiritual realm. And if you're not going to put something real there, then you're going to find some bullshit. And the boomers, to me, were the bullshit generation. They're my generation. And I grew up as a young guy, and they weren't really boomers yet, right? And now they fall for anything. And I think it's kind of funny to watch it. But it's not funny because they want to believe. You have liars. People like Tracy Beans will just be able to play the sad sack and cry. And people will send her money, but she's a snake. She's a liar. She has no business trying to educate anyone because she herself is illiterate on so many levels. But all you have to do is sit there with her little Muppet face and cry and say how everyone's out to get her and it's not fair, and people will throw money at her. And I'm just thinking, fools throwing, separating themselves from their money. Where have I heard that before? I don't care.
I think that karma is building up, and karma isn't always on time, but karma will find his way or her way to the party. And that's going to happen at some point. I think you're right about one thing you said last night, above all others, is Medic was a skilled con artist. He knew how to thread
He's professional.
his monotheism into the mix. And once you bring any form of God, not in the form of God that you might teach in a doctrine, no particular tenet of faith that you might have ever heard of before, but his own version where he just weaves God into, black magic shit, and then weaves it into the Q, analysis or whatever the fuck he calls it. And that was the way to really get the boomers in, because the boomers just flocked to it then.
Yep.
Because now there's this disassociated sense of this being divine by some weird twisted version of the Almighty.
Also, I think it's an excellent stance to keep your discussion we had through the chat that the IRS might revoke his status. I don't see it. Because his performance is so good. Is
what happens now.
Yeah.
When you get a 508 distinction in whatever classification as a ministry, those become, whenever you receive funds under that, those are tax deductible funds. That really gets the IRS's attention. So if you use that distinction of a classification of a 508 ministry, people are sending you money. They're taking it off their tax forms. Every single person that sends you money. Now you have the IRS's fucking attention, because it's not somebody just PayPaling, Patreon, and you never find out about it. They're declaring it on their fucking tax forms that they sent David Joseph Hayes, Praying Medic Ministries, and they're declaring it. And it comes off of what the government takes out of your fucking taxes. He's not using it for a religious purpose. He's using it to decode Q, for God's sakes. That's why he has to maintain some notion of God or some doctrine involved in this, but it's not enough. He's receiving what is tantamount to political journalism donations. And the IRS will instantaneously grant you almost a ministry classification, but they will then look to see what you're doing with it, and then they will come after him. And not only when they take away his classification, they will demand all the money that they were deducted. They will not come after the people that gave you money and deducted it. They're going to come after your ass for the deducted money that never should have been given to you.
Well, as you delineated,
by no means out of the woods.
Yeah, there's many ways they can just ravage you. The thing is, look, what he really needs to be doing. I can't believe I'm going to do this again, but here's the advice for him. It's not going to help him, because he needs to be doing it in the last couple of years. He's made a lot of money with this Q thing, and I was surprised. Ginger informed me this morning that Tracy Beans made enough money on the Q thing to buy a house, and that other guy, the
Coleman Rogers.
No, the one who started it. He had a weird name, pamphlet guy or whatever.
DeFango and James Brower.
Well, the pamphlet guy.
Yeah, that's Coleman Rogers.
Coleman Rogers. He bought a house too off the Q money. So there's a lot of houses.
Yes, he was living with his parents.
No doubt. A lot of money has been obviously raised. So the issue then becomes, if you're a religious organization, generally the government wants to see, and I have some knowledge about this since I helped a friend set up a religious organization in New Jersey. They want to see preaching. And if what you're going to show is some discussion about, a Q level clearance, fictitious person talking about, 40,000 sealed indictments, I think with the IRS, there's only so far you can go claiming you're non-denominational, right?
Yeah.
But I think you're right. At some point, if they do, the basic thing is, if the IRS, once they start asking questions, it's like Bob Mueller, right? Once the questions start, some blood is going to have to be exchanged in order to get out, right?
You know what this is?
Yeah,
it's called a polyp counter, and that's what the IRS will start doing.
The rectum. But that's it is pretty funny. It's funny to me because I feel completely vindicated now. That was the whole point of last night's exercise. Is Ginger wanted to do it, and I never say no to Ginger. So of course we're gonna say
no. Neither do I.
Right? You want to do a show? We'll do a show. I had no idea what I was gonna say, but once I hit the broadcast button, it just occurred to me. I'm like, shit. After like 2 years of being maligned and lied about and attacked, I think I have every right now, not only to celebrate that I was correct, but that the President of the United States has pointed to our greatest enemy and called them a liar. I could never, dude, could you have even imagined 6 months ago?
No.
That we could have gotten something like this?
I could, you and I could be on daily talking about how we just got the talking points from the White House. This is what's happening. We've officially been brought on by the 2020 campaign, and nothing and no one will ever refute that from the campaign. They just won't, because it's not something worth their time. And why would you risk? Never risk. In politics, we have a do no harm theory, every bit as much as a medical doctor would. And in the do no harm theory is, if you have two people reaching 47,000 people or 50,000 people a week or even a night, and they're talking pro-Trump, it doesn't matter that they're calling the world 80% pedophiles. You don't get in there and piss in that pond, right? It goes against, it's an old axiom in politics, you don't do no harm first. They actually went and did this. I mean, they went out of their way to swat this freaking fly.
Right.
And wow, it is remarkable to get them to do that, because almost anyone else would not get that type of attention. You must get a lot of loving from the Right Wing Watch and others in order to get the advisory board of the 2020 campaign to come out and say they don't know who you are, and you certainly are not a member of the Trump campaign or the advisory board. It is a stronger rebuke and more remarkable than the Mueller rebuke of the BuzzFeed story about Cohen. It is certainly in the same realm, but it is remarkable nonetheless.
I was amazed also in this thought that Trump is notorious for being extremely crafty in his abilities to deal with people. That he is one of these guys that will lay something so far in the back that when the person is receiving whatever message, they don't know it's coming from him. And I'm wondering, and I'm going to say something, you say nothing because you have a future in politics. I really don't, but I'm going to say what I think. I've been extremely, I've a mixture of amusement and disappointment and disgust with Laura Trump, right, over the last year or so. And I'm beginning to wonder, by having his people shoot down Vandersteel so publicly, could this be, because I know something of Trump's style and how he does things. Does he really care about Vandersteel or all that? He doesn't. But I think he does care. This might be some kind of interesting way to rein in elements of his family and friends.
Teaching moment.
Yeah, because no one can say he did it, yet it happened. Right Wing Watch getting a call, or this day, what is it, the Beast or whatever the fuck it is.
Mm-hmm.
When was the last time anyone, you said it, when was the last time anyone called them from the Trump White House? Like, that would be never. But suddenly they get a call, and it's a very terse comment. The comment was simply, Vandersteel has no connection with us. Never has. And the assumption is never will, right?
That was the second response. The first response was, we don't know who that is.
Right.
And whoever is, And if they said they were part of the advisory board, they're not. And then Mark, upon following, I believe, then you and I have been through this before. We know what happened. They followed up that response with more videos saying, here she is saying she's this, here she is saying she's that, boom, boom, boom. And then they had to follow up and clarify again because they knew that they were going to say, in spite of the advisory board saying they've never heard of her, here is Ann Vandersteel saying 1, 2, 3, and 4, A, B, C, and D. And so they had to come out with that remark that you just quoted there, which was Mark Serrano saying, we don't know who that is, and certainly is not somebody that's ever been a part or will ever be of the advisory board or the campaign. I mean, it was a strenuous fucking beatdown.
Yeah. And it's all of this cesspit of the Patriot soapbox, right? You have this, the cesspool of swirling bullshit. This is where she thought that she could make any statement she wanted and no one would notice it. It's kind of like if I put on a wig and a lot of makeup and went to some foreign country, like, hey, what happens in Mexico stays in Mexico. But that's wrong. It's not. That's not what it is, especially when you're trying to create the idea that you're working for Donald Trump. Trump is not easy to get a job with, and he's certainly not easy to get on the inner circle or to even get hooked up in any way. It's a rare thing. You've always told me about how it's an abnormal presidency when it comes to the surrogacy. Like this, it's like he became the surrogate. The president became the surrogate hunter and killed them all. And he's basically the only real surrogate left. He wants total control. Well, then look at it. Look at where we're at now. I mean, Ann Vandersteel is trying to go on Patriot Soapbox, and she was on there claiming that she works for the president. And astonishingly, the president somehow was able to clip her wings. And, we have our friend Zoggy 2 here. He says Mitchell pissed on his leg and told him it was raining. Yes. but this is what it is if you are a gaslighter. What is the activity of a gaslighter? To gaslight, right? I mean, it's a sickening thing. But, I enjoyed doing 4.5 hours of material on this yesterday because I felt like I earned it.
And I thought it wasn't enough, clearly. I want everybody to know how these things work. From the inside, what happens when you get this, I think a word you used last night is gadfly about Unirock. I think it actually applies to somebody like Vandersteel. In the political world, we call them political gadflies. And when you have somebody that's just kind of an annoying little insect and it's always on the wall somewhere and trying to insert themselves into the current dialogue and whatever's going on, it's tough because you've got to rein it in when you're running a campaign. So what happens is at this point, Daily Beast calls, they don't get an answer. Nothing fantastic occurring there because that is traditionally, right. Oh, you're with who? Never mind.
Yeah.
You don't answer. And you just keep putting them off, thinking that they're going to run the article without your comment.
Which is the ideal outcome rather than you attach yourself to it.
The ideal outcome is, crazy rag said whatever. So now they don't print the article and they keep asking and they keep sending you information. So what you do is, if you're Mark Serrano, you're in receipt of this information simply because you're the spokesman for the board, the advisory board. And again, the advisory board isn't the campaign per se, but it's a part of the campaign. So Serrano is not in charge of anything beyond messaging for this advisory board. So what Serrano does is he'll send it up to the food chain. He'll send it up to Chris Carr. He'll send it up to Bill Stepien, and he'll have people in the campaign look at it. It doesn't go to Brad Parscale. It doesn't go to necessarily Lara Trump unless she vouched for somebody in there at some point in time. What happens is Serrano, who knows Ann and can text her at any point, probably gave her a heads up that this was in the mix. And she still went around talking like she was. I guarantee Serrano was like, hey, listen, Daily Beast reached out to us about this. You got to cool your jets on this. You can't say this. And, don't say anything about pedophiles and all that stuff. Just leave it alone. We're not going to answer them, blah, 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 blah. She continues with this shit, goes on the Patriot Soapbox, ends up on the front page of right-wing News Watch. And they put out this thing about her saying, I am a Trump surrogate. I have to make these appearances. Love it. Love the sense of duty, and that you feel you have to make these appearances on Patriot Soapbox. And then she proceeds to say that the administration is working on an appropriate response to help people absorb the reality of what Q is telling them.
Yes.
So essentially is saying to the internet, hey, Q is real. The president knows he's real. We're just trying to help you get the mind around, arresting 70,000 pedophiles and sending them off to Gitmo to deprive them of their civil rights and declare martial law and take over in the streets, which apparently these people think is a good thing. So she's saying this. Exactly. So eventually Serrano gets this and is like, okay, fuck. Serrano sends it up, like I said, to either Chris Carr or Stepien or somebody like that. And they're like watching it. This is what they do. They don't know who the fuck Ann Vandersteel is, right? Nobody's ever heard of this crazy bitch. So they start Googling, who the fuck is Ann Vandersteel? All this shit starts coming up. Pizzagate this, Seth Rich conspiracy this, pedophilia everywhere, Q, every fucking fantastical, nonsensical thing anybody could say.
Don't forget,
comes up in a simple Google search.
The Ballad of Frank Gagliardi will also come up.
Everything. It depends on how much they want to Google. So that's how much time they can devote to her. 2 seconds. It's a snap decision. Anybody in the nexus of the campaign is going to say, get rid of it, stomp it, disassociate. I never want to hear that fucking
Make it go away. Yeah.
Make it go. That's exactly how this stuff happens. I've done it myself. This is the fact that it made it up to the level of Mark Serrano is only because Serrano let himself be dragged into a personal relationship with Ann Vandersteel. Stupid, Mark. Fucking stupid. And Ned Ryan's the guy, I forgot his name. Ned Ryan's the other guy that we were supposed to do a show with. You were going to produce it. I was going to have some show with him and, whatever. I gave him some kind of white paper. And then soon after there, they, thankfully cut ties. So this is just a strange, sordid tale. But I want to tell people, this doesn't mean anybody knows who fucking Ann Vandersteel is. It's basically like getting rubbed out in an alleyway as a homeless bum with no ID, and you go into the morgue as Jane Doe. You've been rubbed out. Nobody fucking knows who you are, and now nobody cares, and nobody ever will. The stigma attached with what happened is permanent. It is scar tissue attached to both Bill and Ann. Whatever withering, dithering fucking campaign of relevancy they were hanging on to is dead. I don't care if they retain 50,000 boomers watching them for the happy, happy, happy message of everything's fine in Trump world. All is well. That's probably not going to go away overnight, but the credibility is absolutely shot. And it was shot because they blindly chased after the coin. They moved everywhere. Like Ginger said, Bill used to scream at a conspiracy theory. He would stop the production to tell Dilly to stop fucking talking crazy, but he can't have it on his show. Which was kind of hard to do because in case you don't watch Dilly, he's fucking crazy.
Yeah, but that's the irony. I think the irony now is Dilly has more of an actual following than Bitchell. It's got to suck for Bitchell. A lot of
boomers on the internet.
Yeah, it's got to suck because what Dilly has proven is that credibility only separates you from success on Twitter. And Mitchell will never be able to do what Dilly is able to do.
Well, if you're talking about a Periscope, then yeah, maybe Dilly, I guess, is trying to stream to more people. But his Twitter's done. I mean, he's been fried so many times. He only has like a couple thousand followers. So he'll never have what Mitchell has on the Twitter end. And maybe he can grow to more viewers on like Periscope or YouTube than Mitchell has. Perhaps maybe he can do that. I don't know. It depends how many stupid fucking people they are out there. But his Twitter's shot and it's pathetic. And it'll never be anything. I mean, I think he's got like a couple thousand followers. And then now somebody will report him because he's already been banned. And then Twitter will ban it again.
Yeah.
He's not allowed to come back.
Right. He blew that.
He's fucked.
Yeah, no, he's working Periscope. But anyway, I don't know. I mean, for me, I'm just happy that I stuck in the game long enough that I got my I got my 2 bits. That's really what
your scalps
was about. I'm publicly I mean, it's a rare thing that I'm going to use another person's name in the subject of my broadcast. Even rarer that I would leave it up on YouTube. And it's going to stay, and even more rare that I wrote like 3 paragraphs of stuff in the subject so that it's more searchable. I mean, I really feel strongly about what we did last night. These people are garbage. And it's not just me saying it now. The President of the United States of America has weighed in on them, that they're liars. And so I have no more compunction. It's like, oh, you want to say something good about him? Then fuck you. As far as I'm concerned, you don't give a shit about the president then. The president has made it clear that he agrees with me and you. These are not good people. They're grifters, they're liars, they're cheaters, and screw them. Screw them. And even Dildo, Mr. Dildo Scammons himself, is nowhere to be found defending Anne. I haven't heard any periscopes of him defending her. It's like it never happened. Even, Ann Vandersteel has kind of gone to ground at this point. I think she's wondering what's her next move.
It's got to be a gut punch. I mean, wow, what a gut punch. As far as Dilly's concerned, I don't watch it, so I don't know. But I can just tell you, having spent like 14 months or 15 months or whatever it is, like listening to him, which I, of course, didn't watch. And I never appeared with him. I don't think that I always told Bill I wouldn't ever go on with him because he's so insane. I wouldn't want any of his shit to, spill over on me. But I don't know. I hear what people say he's saying. And he seems to be clearly insane. He's clearly insane. What little I have seen is from the Revenge of the Sis guys.
Those guys are
which
hilarious.
Is kind of funny. I mean, those guys were kind of funny on it. I mean, the general humor I don't really get. I don't know why it's called a comedy show, but I think that they're just kind of political nihilists that just prefer the chaos of Trump to anything else. That's what it appears to be.
Yeah.
As opposed to like grounded policy analysts or anything like that, or political scientists.
No. They're
like
two
that.
guys, as they say in England, they're taking the piss. That's what they do for an hour.
Yeah, and it's fine. It's like tuning in to two guys shooting the breeze, whatever. But it was funny because that's the most I've seen Dilly in a while. And he's talking about Greg Gutfeld stealing his jokes, but yet doesn't say what he's talking about. Like, that's insane. First of all, that's insanity. And he also says that Dan Bongino was stealing his material.
Right. But remember, this is the same individual, this Dilly, that claimed that the president knew who he was even before the election, right?
Not only does the president not know who Dilly is, I could tell you that all but 734 people in the 8th district of Arizona don't know who Dilly is after he spent $42,000 trying to get them to know his name.
It's not but that's not remarkable, since you informed me a long time ago that the only voters in Arizona that would know who he is potentially would be people that actually, live in the same district with him. That would be Arizona 5, right?
Is that 1, 5? I don't even fucking know.
He lives in the 5th district. He was trying to run in the 8th district, and no one gave a shit. I think you told me that the Board of Elections over there knew that it was a farce, but we're like, you know what? He's only going to get like 1,000 votes anyway, so why make us think about it?
They could have challenged it. His signatures were so bad. They could have challenged it, but he didn't have enough, and they weren't submitted correctly. And they chose not to have him removed from the ballot. Him and 3 others.
Why
they
bother?
chose to leave them on the ballot.
Yeah, why bother?
Fucking cannon fodder.
To me, that's the ultimate, is that in his mind, he's like this big guy. But the reality is, for those people in the know, professional political class people, he wasn't even worth stepping on. To me, that would be the ultimate hurtful thing if I were him.
Dude, you know what you are? You're a guy with like 5,000 Twitter followers that used to be on the Bill Mitchell show. And that's it. That's fucking it. Except if you want to be known as a guy who's made a bunch of comments about rape and weird stuff, and about women and all kinds of weird stuff, which is why you lost your Twitter account, threatening violence and calling women whores and all this other shit. You're an abject person in your own right. I find you to be objectionable. You're hideous to look at and to listen to. And if you need evidence of that, I would show that picture that Athene sent me.
What a
And
fantastic
even my
photo.
fucking cat would run away.
Yes.
It's just pathetic. Here's the guy who thinks he's relevant. If that dude could fly to DC tomorrow and not have a single thing to do or person to call, no one would know who the fuck he was or care. And that you are the essence of, you are Mr. Irrelevant, dude. You are Mr. Irrelevant. You are so irrelevant. I can't believe I'm talking about you right now. And the fact that you can fucking tweet deck, somebody else can share out on their tweet deck and get you still 5,000, 7,000 views. Big fucking deal. That's fucking pathetic. If I really wanted to, I'd do 5 or 6 times that amount standing on my fucking head, because I actually do know people. I actually have worked in government before. And if I ran for Congress tomorrow and didn't spend a dime or knock on a single fucking door, I would have 5 times the amount of votes that you got, spending almost $50,000.
It's pathetic.
I could run in a district I don't fucking live in.
No, it's pathetic, man. We were having that conversation during his election. And I asked you, I remember I asked you, I said, so look, if I lived over there and I ran and I just basically said, listen, anyone who votes for me gets free pot. I'll get you high for free. Do you think I could get more than his 734 votes? You go, dude, if you had the balls to do that, I think you said you'd get at least 2,000 or 3,000 votes.
Sure. Sure. Oh yeah.
Just so that means some clown promising free weed would triple or quadruple what Dilly did, and he had all that money. He spent a lot of money for such a poor showing, I think.
40, 47, 50 grand, whatever total. I mean, that was pretty, I could do some damage in an 11, 12 person primary where nobody really had a huge edge in fundraising. I mean, certainly the top 3 candidates had a lot more than what Dilly had. But to finish second last with that few votes is almost a statistical anomaly in politics. Like if we still had Richard Baris on, I'm sure he wouldn't want to talk about Brennan Dilley because it's so fucking ridiculous. But if I said, Richard, okay, person A spent $47,000 in a open primary where there were 12 candidates, and they spent the 4th most amount of money for 47,000 per this many vote total turnout, what would be the percentage that you would, basically ballpark that around there? No way in hell is he coming up with 0.8%.
No, I think we did ask him during that period, and I think he said somewhere between 5 and 10% is what that spend should have resulted in, if it was
easily
like a normal election.
And that is not factoring in the fact that there's some kind of social media exposure that was heightened by the Bill Mitchell foothold that he had, spilling over into Facebook and his Twitter account, which granted is only a micro percentage of people in your district, but that's how he fundraised. It wasn't like the people in that Arizona district were giving him money. No, it was all outside all people from around the country that watched that stupid shit. So, but anyway, it's kind of funny that we're talking about him. I am talking about Mr. Irrelevant. It doesn't make him relevant that I'm talking about it. It's just the revenge of the cis guys, or just 2 guys apparently just kind of having fun with it. Don't know who the hell Billy is from a hole in the ground. And here it's just this chubby guy with no chin talking about how they are out of shape and ugly or something. I mean, it's pretty funny. You have this ugly guy, ugly fat guy calling the other guys ugly and fat. So right there is the pot kettle black argument, just kind of funny back and forth shit. But the fact that he honestly thinks Dan Bongino knows who the fuck he is, it's not true. It is. I tell you how he says all these things all the time. Oh, there's a Trump family member that, got a hold of me and said, hey, why are you bashing on Q? Or I know for a fact the president knows who I am, all this shit. You know how he says that? Why he says that is because Ann fucking Bannister tells people this all the fucking time. Whoever she's talking to, she says to them, oh, you probably don't know this, but I've talked to people. The president knows who you are.
That's right.
Oh, I didn't tell you this. Lara and Eric Trump watch you. They know your buck. They know what you're doing. Do you understand how big that is? Did you know that Don Jr. knows who you are? She says this shit to fucking people everywhere. And it's just, frankly, it's not true. You know how I know it's not true? It's because she said the same shit to me when I was working on the stupid show. I know more people than you. Why are you telling me things when I know the people that you're talking about? And it wasn't as if she didn't know that I knew more than her. She was just so ingrained with this bullshit, this overly gratuitous attitude to, ingratiate herself into somebody's circle, that she would still do it to me anyway. Yet so stupid that she couldn't come up with the correct way to, compliment or seek to make you feel good about yourself. And she was telling me at one point that I was going to be the next Charles Krauthammer.
What, you'd be a washed up dude in a wheelchair?
You're telling me I'm going to be a Bill Kristol, buddy, that Trump hates?
Dude, if somebody told me I'd be the next Krauthammer, I would grow eyes in the back of my fucking head. I'd be convinced someone was coming out with a lead pipe to cripple me,
cripple me. So, at that point, I knew she wasn't being facetious to make fun of me in any way for not being conservative enough or whatever for Trump. It was just that she's so blindly retarded that she didn't know, how to somehow think that she was complimenting me. It certainly wasn't in any way something that I felt was something I was aspiring to be. But she would tell me the same thing. Oh, the Trump watches your periscopes. I'm like, no, he doesn't. And I'd be worried if Trump was sitting around watching anybody's fucking periscope. It's just so dumb. It is so fucking dumb. There are one or two people that visit with the president that show him certain things online. I happen to know who one of them is. And she doesn't visit with him that often. And she's not even that political of a person. But she will show him what she thinks are neat little videos.
I know who you're talking
people
about.
Saying nice things. Yeah. But you're not going to say her name, and I'm not going to say her name.
Yeah.
Trump does not watch podcasts on his fucking phone. Trump loves the TV. If it ain't on the boombox, baby, he ain't watching it. All right? And he ain't watching a whole lot of One America News Network either. Okay? It just doesn't happen that way. He might tune in to the this hard to find Newsmax only because Dennis Ruddy is his buddy, and maybe he'll tune into that. I don't really think so. But he is watching more CNN and MSNBC than you and I have ever done in our entire life. That's how he monitors his enemies. That's how he keeps up with coverage. He watches Fox, CNN, NBC, all this shit all the time. He is not on his phone looking at anybody's fucking podcast. Not happening. Not even Scott Adams or anybody else like that. Maybe I guarantee somebody took him a phone, showed them a Scott Adams part of a podcast. He thought it was cool and shot a message out to Scott Adams a while ago saying, I thought that was pretty neat, whatever. That's how that probably all happened.
Yeah.
He's not sitting around watching Scott Adams. He damn sure doesn't know who Bill Mitchell is. I will bet my fucking life on it. He doesn't know who these fucking people are. He certainly doesn't fucking care. And the people in his atmosphere now in the campaign world now know that if you do know who Bill Mitchell or Ann Vandersteel are, you better not admit to it because you're going to be held responsible for their shit. So it's bad news for Gina Loudon. She was warned 100 times what was going to happen by vouching for Vandersteel. Too late. It's already happened. Gina, you're now toxic.
Yeah. Well,
Lara, you were warned. Hope you got your time out from the president.
And we did, all of these things. I was extremely disturbed last March about all this crap. But I just ignored it. I figured these things have a tendency to get corrected. And lo and behold, here we are. Everything is now corrected. Mm-hmm. Right. The president...
let me interrupt you. Doodles 54, I don't know what the hell you want me to say that I haven't already said 3 fucking hours ago. As the scope is entitled, I talked everything about the shutdown with Richard Baris for like 2.5 fucking hours. So instead of answering that, I'm just going to say, go ahead and restart the broadcast if you care what I have to say. But don't demand that I get off a subject that I'm on because, this isn't your show. Go do a Periscope on what you think is going to happen in 3 weeks. It's called fucking negotiation, nothing, and or new shutdown. Next question. But anyway, sorry to interrupt you.
Well, I mean,
Finish
I'm noticing the comments, and since I'm monitoring it on your account, I'm not. I'm kind of like on a light trigger. I'm not going to pull it,
your
but I'm looking at these things, going, it's funny. We do this for free, and you're there with Richard Baris for 2 hours, giving every little detail of this thing, and then we start talking about. Oh, there he goes. No, he's back. We start
Yeah,
talking
I'm
about
back. I'm back.
something we want to talk about, and people start heckling us. And my attitude is, oh, if it was my account, I'd block them. I blocked Athene that one time. Remember?
No, I don't. But that couldn't have been good.
Oh, it was fantastic. And she asked me later. She goes, "Why'd you do it?" I said, "Just to show you that I could."
Yeah.
It's good to be mean, I tell you.
But it kind of is. I mean, I am shedding that emotional barrier where I try not to lose my shit on people and try to give them the benefit of the doubt, because I've been doing it for so fucking long. I'm starting to lose that need. There are very kind-hearted, good faith people, Trump loyalists, that just want a fucking ring to hold on to before they fall off into oblivion.
Right.
They just want something, a branch, and I get it. I get the angst. I get the anxiety. And sometimes I try to alleviate that if possible. Sometimes, frankly, a wound is a wound. And when you're bleeding, I'll tell you you're bleeding so you don't fucking die. All right. I mean, to make it sound way more important than it is, if you want political reality, I'll give it to you the best way I know how. So, but the incessant need to concern troll me and concern troll you on dividing MAGA. I mean, we're not dividing MAGA. First of all, MAGA doesn't even live on fucking Twitter. Okay, MAGA lives in fundraising and actual voting. All right, that's where it lives. Actual political reality. This notion that you can divide a movement on Twitter is kind of silly. The only way you could divide MAGA would be Trump decides, all right, I say fuck it on the wall. It doesn't matter anymore. You know what? The immigration law is okay. We can work with it. I mean, that type of massive policy overhaul would be dividing MAGA. There's only one fucking guy who can divide it. It's the guy who created it.
Right.
Ain't nothing you're going to do about it, Twitter boys and girls. Listen, Will Chambermaid, who the fuck is this guy? This guy's a peon, a nobody. He hooks himself onto Posobiec for a while. Posobiec, as he's wont to do, builds up his fucking Periscope account for this fucking nut job. He's a fucking idiot. If he's a lawyer, I want to know. I want to see proof. Not only do I want to see the JD, I want to discuss it with the actual program that was that issued it, and then I want to see if he actually passed the bar. Because I can't see this guy getting past the LSAT stage. Everything he is saying regarding Trump is absolutely wrong. And it is being parroted out in this little circle of other irrelevant asshats like Ali Akbar and which is his fucking name, by the way. Oh, it's so racist to say Ali Akbar. No, it's his fucking name. If you don't believe that, go look at his mugshots. All right, and Cernovich. And now they have this little gang of whiny crybabies, and they're the peaceniks, tards that I was talking about before. Oh my God, Trump shouldn't go after anybody in Syria ever again, not even with 2,000 soldiers. Oh, Trump, I can't believe he got involved in Venezuela and recognized the opposition. Shut the fuck up. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. My God, I hope we don't send any U.S. troops to Venezuela. Are we going to send U.S. troops to Venezuela? How is this Grenada now? How fucking stupid are you? How stupid are you? You are Russian shillbot. Again, you are the worst part of our fucking movement that gets picked up by the right-wing watch nut jobs and put out there. So people think we are dumb enough to argue everything that Putin wants. Guess what Putin wants? Putin wants no fucking troops, American troops in Syria. Why? Because he has a shitload of Russian troops in Syria.
Yep.
And he'd kind of like to build a fucking base so he can subvert everything we're trying to do with Israel and Saudi Arabia and Jordan. Hello, hello, hello. Protect Yemen. Oh, by the way, the evil war in Yemen that we're facilitating with the Saudis. Guess who wants that fucking thing to end? Vladimir Putin. So all the crazies in Yemen can spill into the Middle East, and the magical ISIS creation can stay on so that forever and ever more, Putin can stay in the Middle East and fuck with us, and fuck with our friends, and fuck with Israel. Guess who else Putin fucking loves? Maduro. He
That's his
fucking
boy.
loves Maduro. Yeah, that's his fucking
That's
boy.
his vassal.
So Trump recognized the opposition leader. Where? Always. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. So if your enemy has an enemy, it is doctrine, motherfuckers, that the Americans are going to back him. And they're going to find every democratic nation in South and Central America to go ahead and back us on it. And you know who's going to come after us every single time? China, Russia, Cuba. Big fucking deal. They always do. I find it funny that these so-called assholes are saying that, you know, Trump is listening to neocons. Is that it now? Am I a neocon because I recognize the social and economic practical benefits of backing an opposition leader to Maduro, a ruthless fucking dictator overseeing a reckless policy of socialism that has taken one of the most wealthy, mineral-rich countries in Central and South America total and brought it to ruin? You're telling me I should what? Stay out of it as an American? Fuck you. There is no chance we're sending American troops down. You're stupid if you think that. You think this is the first fucking time we've had a imbalanced situation?
Especially in South America, yeah.
In South Central America? I mean, give me a fucking break. I mean, they're idiots. They're assholes and idiots. I'm done with them, but I will still call them out as needed.
Yeah,
Because
I mean, I'm
I
amused by it now. I mean, I see, you know, on the Twitter, the Periscope timeline, you know, Jack Posobiec going on and on and on about, you know, some peacenik agenda, and I just have to wonder, does he actually believe any of this stuff? I doubt that he does. I think that it's just it's all a pose. You know, it's anyway. That's
if he's not getting Bitcoin
right
from some goddamn pro Russia Ukrainian, I'm shocked, because every single policy issue Jack comes down on is fucking like Putin himself was giving the fucking directive. Every fucking one. And it's just hard to ignore. And that's not a personal judgment on him. You know, I like Jack. He's fine. But to be a journalist or whatever the hell it's called,
well, he works for OAN. Let's not go so far.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, let's not go too far. But I mean, honestly, don't take yourself that fucking serious. You can talk about serious subjects like I do without taking yourself serious, which I don't. I'm not telling anybody the president knows who I am. I don't tell anybody the president watches my fucking periscopes. I don't tell you I know Brad Parscale by, you know, a handshake and a name. I don't. Do I know people inside the campaign at very high fucking in places? Of course I fucking do. All right, but it doesn't do anything for me. I'm not. The campaign hasn't reached out to me and said, "Hey, we need you on board. We're going to pay you to do this in Pennsylvania." I haven't fucking gotten any calls. I probably won't. Maybe next year they'll call me up and offer me some fucking regional director position for $1,000 a month. I'm just like everybody else. I'm just one of the only people who's actually done this for a fucking living that has the time or the fucking temerity to even talk about it. It's not an important subject who I am, other than the fact that my resume should just speak for itself, just like yours should. You should just put your resume up and be like, hey, listen, I don't claim to be, you know, a political fucking genius, but here's what I've done in my fucking life. And so if you're going to call me some fucking basement dwelling loser, you got to get past the hurdle that I've already been a success in my life. And this is what I'm choosing to do right now with my time. Therefore, you should assume, based on past, that the present means I'm going to be successful at what I'm doing, because I've already been successful at the past. You look at my resume and say, okay, so, all right, let's go quickly over my resume. I have been a fucking intern for the state government. I have worked for the state government for 8 years as a legislative and policy analyst. I have been employed by the state GOP as a field director for campaign work. I have been the field director for the state Senate campaign committee. I have worked for an executive agency for the governor of Pennsylvania for 4 years as a top position as a director of operations. And I have worked on 3 separate presidential elections. So, and I can't tell you how many state houses, state, Senate, and congressional races I have run. I just can't even tell you because I can't fucking count them all. So if you have all that going for you, then I will listen to what you have to say and I will give it the predicate worth based on what your resume is. If you don't have it, chances are you're pulling shit out of your asshole. Tell me more about how you had your own executive recruiter business. Tell me more about that. Yeah. Tell me more about how you're a lawyer in the DC area, but never seem to be doing any fucking client work. And all you do is get on Periscope and whine like a little bitch about everything president does.
Well, he worked for
Tell me again how you're a best-selling fucking author.
Right.
When nobody seems to know that you ever wrote a fucking self-help book.
Yeah. But everyone knows his mom's book. That's a big shadow cast over his thing. I'm amazed by all of it. And you know that Ali Akbar character, he was disparaging you 2 years ago when I first entered Periscope. And to me, he seemed like a rodent, you know, some little rodent. And then I found out that he took it up the you know what with Turd Blossom, and that didn't help in my own head. You know, it didn't help. His image in my own head, it went down after that point. Then I found out he was some sort of drug addict who was arrested for breaking into people's cars, trying to fence shit for drugs, and he took the rap for his drug addict friend. I mean, there's all these stories you hear, and I don't really care. But when I saw him and his little boyfriend ridiculing you.
Oh, yeah. Where's he at now? How'd his career go?
Well, I mean, that guy, he got let go from the Gateway Pundit, right? Eventually. He had press credentials for like 5 minutes.
How bad do you have to be, Glenn? When you do not have the journalistic integrity to work at a non-journalistic entity like the Gateway Pundit, how fucking bad are things when you're asked to leave the Gateway Pundit?
That's like getting fired from TMZ or something, you know? I got fired from TMZ because I wasn't having enough sex in the bathrooms.
Right? Oh. I mean, I think the only person that can appreciate how bad Ann Vandersteel feels right now might be that Lucian kid. Getting fired from the Gateway Pundit and getting squashed by the president's campaign advisory board. Those are 2 very fucking hard things to do.
That's right. Wintrick, his name is, right?
I don't know. Something.
Anyway, yeah. So there's those guys. They had their moment. They thought they were funny, but where are they now? Where are any of these people? What was that bearded guy? What was his name? Tom Chatelet and Joe Pro. Remember this stuff? The Joe Pro show.
Oh, no.
Like it's a show.
The guy that's sitting on his parents' roof,
right,
vaping.
I sit in my parents' roof vaping, listening to music. That's the show. That's the show.
These fucking people. I have no idea where they are, and if they're not already, you know, down and out, they're on their way down, and it's just hilarious because I don't think I took a first shot at any of these fucking guys. They all decided to take the first shot at me, and for the most part, we left it alone. It wasn't until they started to get like ridiculous with it, with the lies and the over the top bullshit. I mean, where's toothless boy at? I mean, the meth head has pretty much disappeared. His accounts are pretty much wiped out. Every time he tries to get back on Twitter, they zap him. He's pretty much dead. He's trying to crowdfund himself right now because he's got no fucking meth money. I mean, all of our fucking enemies didn't have the benefit of truth. So the shield and armor that, you know, we have, they don't have. They just made the mistake of assuming we were just going to use the shield and the armor and not the weapons. That was their mistake. And if we choose to wield the sword, metaphorically speaking, on the people that attack for no reason, then it's been, our record of success is pretty clear.
One thing
and
you
it's
left
not something
out.
you and I wake up and talk about every day. We don't fucking want to do this.
One thing you left out of your resume is you were able to get Sarah Palin at an event that we did, which was all smoke and mirrors. I mean, I was amazed watching it. It's like an organization like ours really has no business, in my opinion, try to do something there in the center of the Trump universe, in the presidential ballroom at Trump International in DC, with Sarah Palin headlining it. That's like for the big guys to do it. But you did it because you understood how to use connections in politics, and like these animals that can appear like a puffer fish. They appear bigger than they actually are, and we were successful.
It was definitely a big swing, I mean, but hey, then they took shots at us for how we did it, and then you get creepy porn and Paperboy tried to say that somebody embezzled funds. How do you give somebody $60,000 in money and make $72,000 back, and you call it? All that went to the hotel, you dumb dick. It's right there. It's all right there in the reports. You're a fucking liar, you piece of shit. You're fucking fat, deaf.
What I've learned through all of this is all you have to do is say something, and there's going to be a certain percentage of people that will just believe it. That's why, you just say things like, oh, so-and-so, he made a video where he had sexual congress with a horse. If you just say it, there's going to be 20 or 30% that'll be like, oh, he did, and we're off to the races. So, that disgusting creature living in the, somewhere in the desert in Texas with his morbidly obese brother. They're like down to one shower every quarter at this point.
With a bucket.
What a dumb fuck. He called himself Stealth Jeff. And Stealth Jeff is so stealthy, he's gone. He's fucking invisible now, right? So he changed his name back to, what is it, Draw and Strike?
Yeah, now he's back to telling everybody that there's all still a secret. And we're all going to get this, this is the new horse. We're all going to owe Rod Rosenstein a big apology once this is all cleared up. He's running out of fucking time there, too, because once Barr's in, Rosenstein's gone. I wonder who's been saying that for fucking 6 months about Rosenstein leaving.
Yeah.
They're wrong about fucking everything. And they still retain what? Credibility? It's fucking stupid. It's stupid. And the fact that he is disheveled, slovenly, fat, disgusting, fucking deaf, ugly bastard who delivers fucking paper and begs for fucking money so he can borrow his brother's truck. I mean, this is the guy. This is not made up shit. That is his own tweets. And he compiles porn clips.
I was going to say, but his taste in blowjob videos is outstanding. So there's that.
Let's be very clear. This fucking piece of shit, this piece of human shit, Brian D. Cates, otherwise known as previously Stealth. Who is he? Fucking Prince? He was previously Stealth Jeff, and now he's using his own fucking name. He delivers fucking papers somewhere in like Southeast Texas, and he lives with his twin brother. And clearly there's some type of prenatal condition that was afflicted upon him. And this guy is trying to tell you that Stealth Jeff was the whole big Slow Walker thing before Slow Walker came. Jeff is going to, Jeff fucking Sessions is going to solve everything. Nothing fucking, it's totally wrong, and the president was vindicated because he never was playing, what are they calling it, kabuki theater or whatever. So he's completely wrong about that. Now he's going to try to switch it up to Rosenstein, come up with all this fancy shit about Baker testimony. He's a fucking idiot. And who he really is, though, is a creepy guy who compiles bukkake scenes. And if you don't know what bukkake is, it's a disgusting multiple men releasing their seed on a woman's face, mainly big in Japan, I guess, judging by the research I had to do on this fucking guy. So he puts together porn clips, openly admits it, This is who you're fucking listening to? By the way, never, ever worked for government at all. He was a fucking Reagan Battalion pro Egg McMuffin blogger. No business at all talking about politics. Is going to roundly reject something that I said, and you're going to believe him. Oh, okay. Then you're an idiot. Oh, you shouldn't talk that way about people. No, you're dumb. You're dumb. If you believe this guy over here, creepy porn paperboy, a fucking guy who delivers papers, delivers them, if he has the gas money to drive his brother's truck. Not making this up.
He had to, remember, he was shilling for cash to get...
Shilling for cash so he could make the paper route work in his brother's truck.
Right.
And obviously keep the internet on so he could fucking make porn compilations of men jerking off on women's faces. This isn't somehow a fucking authority. There's nothing he can say. I don't give a shit what he wants to say. Even though the fact that the FEC reports are fucking perfect and nobody's ever said a fucking word about them, and everything we've ever expended is already on there and shown perfectly. There's no fucking, you can't say anything about us. Oh, by the way, you piece of human shit, stop fucking degrading women with your fucking pornography, and stop lying to the fucking boomers on Twitter who want to believe that Rod Rosenstein is now a white hat. Stop. You're pathetic. You are fucking creepy porn paperboy. You will be driven into fucking the blackness where you belong.
It's an amazing thing. It's amazing. I think part of it, though, is that Twitter and Periscope really are a cesspool. But that said, it's been fun also. I mean, it's been a fun ride so far, I must say. And no one has noticed I switched to my absolutely genuine. I've been doing some cleaning up around here. These are my gargoyle sunglasses from the 80s. This is the pair that, what's his face? The Terminator. This was the glasses Schwarzenegger wore in the Terminator. So, of course, when the Terminator came out, I had to get them. Right.
Yeah. I remember those. You don't break them out every day. It's only on rare occasions that I get to see
No. Those were the Porsche Carreras. No, these are the actual glasses that they put on Schwarzenegger in the first movie. They're really
replicas,
good.
or you spent $10,000 on the actual ones?
No. I mean, this is the gargoyles were like the cutting edge ballistic. All the shooters wore them in the 80s. Before Wiley X and 511, and back in the 80s, if you were a shooter, most of the guys just wear regular sunglasses. But then these were like the first, this is like the first pair of high-tech sunglasses for guys who did a lot of shooting. And so, of course, it figured that James Cameron would want them on Schwarzenegger.
James Cameron, who hates guns, by the way, thinks they should be...
right, of course. Unless he's making money off them because he's a cocksucker. As in one who sucks cock.
Don't you also... I know we have close fam that are guilty of this, but don't you also appreciate the fact that all of these people who malign Hollywood and hate Hollywood and just trash Hollywood all the time are the first ones to go out and watch 4 movies every fucking weekend?
Oh, yeah.
You can't get me in a fucking theater to get these assholes fucking money. The last movie I saw in the theater was John Wick 2. Guess what the next fucking movie I'm going to see?
John Wick 3.
It's John Wick fucking 3. So, I just find it funny that a lot of people are so willing to keep Hollywood afloat with their hard-earned money, and yet call them all crazy fucking pedophiles and liberal assholes, which they may very well be.
I heard that 78% of all Hollywood people are pedophiles. See how I did that?
Yeah, mostly Democrats.
See, now we're doing their show. That's basically I pull a number out of the air. And then you say it's mainly Democrats, and we're there. We'll forget the name, Denny Hastert. We'll never pass our lips, right?
Oh, don't forget Trump has abandoned his base Trump will not be reelected in 2020.
Right.
That's the other thing that I might as well just rip them all off and say that.
Well, we could quote Cerno or Thurno, and you just have to say, repeat after me, Trump is a broken man. There you go.
Dude, when Mike Cernovich is trying to define your life as broken, I mean, this is a guy. I mean, you talk about broken. There's definitely something broken going on there in his psyche and whatever soul is left in that twisted fucking body. This dude is weird. And for him to say that Trump is a broken guess where he got that? Probably from his little trading partner, Steve Bannon, the fucking rat.
Talk about a broken man. I mean, this is a guy, he's got to go to fucking Europe in order to work because the president has basically told him, it's like a mob thing. It's like, yeah, we're not going to kill you, but never return to this town. You can go earn a living somewhere else. Let's just hope we don't see you again. If we see you, we're going to have to deal with you, sloppy one.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Bannon made his way down to Venezuela and started cooking up some next election.
He's probably there right now. I think he's using high turbines charcoal recipe to cure the dysentery. So it'd be him and Ann Coulter. Who needs them?
Forget. Don't even. I'm not bothering anymore. I usually like to take one of her tweets, retweet it, and make a smart ass comment. But fuck her. I'm not gonna give her the time of day anymore. But I am not done, and I'm not done gloating, and I'm not done hearing others help along the way gloat. But I do have a habit of doing my 3.5 hours, letting my phone fucking die, so I can't keep going forever. That is my own containment protocol. But if you'll have me, I would love to make my first appearance in weeks tomorrow night so that I can continue my diatribe.
Let's do it
against our enemies, foreign and domestic.
I think that would be fantastic, and maybe we'll if you can think of anyone else you want to, we can just do it together. That's fine. But maybe we bring on a few guests here and there, like
why not
a real fam celebration? A
little spice of life. Because you know what? One night is not enough.
It's not. And I might break out the Terminator gargoyles again. Probably not.
All right.
But they're too reminiscent of the 80s. It's weird putting them on because the last time I wore them, I had a full head of hair. And I was like 20 years old.
They look entirely different when framed by a full head of hair.
Yeah, right. It would be like, it's better. Like I have sunglasses for being an old and bald guy. That's what these are, right?
Let's see if I can still see. I might wear my sunglasses on Saturday as well.
Well, you see, I started wearing the sunglasses because this light that's blaring in my face, and then I'm getting like all kinds of like a dry eye. Now with this, I can go on for 5 hours and it's no problem. I could do 6 hours of Bill Mitchell material.
Ginger, don't send me a power block. Leah already tried that trick. I will not be going past the 3.5 battery life on my phone for a good reason. It's like I call it, the containment protocol. It's a self-governance method. So,
one last question for you, Adam. This is like a tail end thing. I've noticed that in the last 4 weeks, 4 or 5 weeks ago, the way you talked about the Mueller investigation, there were, maybe I was reading too much into it, but there seemed to be some overtones of maybe a little trepidation of what's going to go down. But today, in the few days previous, you and Baris both have become, it seems like, pretty dismissive of the whole thing. Like, it's bullshit, fuck it. Am I wrong? Am I reading this wrong?
Yeah, I think it's we were kind of wondering what cards were going to get shown, why they were, what the holdup was on the Corsi Stone stuff. It seemed to be one of the last bridges they were looking to cross. We know that William Barr's swearing in is kind of seen as a end date for them to function like this. So, what we learned today was this is all more process bullshit. There's nothing tying the president together. with any of this stuff. We know that Steve Bannon's the one who was in contact with Roger about when the rest of the emails were going to get released. We know Steve Bannon spilled everything that he possibly fucking knew about everything. And Mueller spent a year trying to corroborate it with Michael Cohen, Manafort, people under his General Flynn, people under his deals. So we know that there's really nothing, there's no smoking gun out there. I think the last piece of the puzzle in the next couple of weeks will finally be indicting WikiLeaks. You'll see an indictment of Julian Assange and or others associated with WikiLeaks. I think you'll see other how you want to refer to them, non-indigenous personnel being indicted, and they will never see the inside of a courtroom. And of course, as I was told today, this is all moot. Roger Stone knows win, lose, or draw in December 2020. If he happens to be incarcerated, he will be fully pardoned for the political prosecution. I would anticipate that would go for Manafort and probably General Flynn as well. So that's no longer on his record. So, you know, there's really nothing here that's going to existentially threaten the president. So that's, I think that the last thing we wanted to determine was did Mueller find a direct connection between the presidential campaign and the WikiLeaks operation? Did they know for a fact and work in conjunction with each other about when those emails were going to be released? Even that is not really collusion. Even that is not a conspiracy against America or anything else that would be inappropriate. Inappropriate maybe, but not illegal. So they couldn't even find that. They could not even find that. And I suspect that in the list of charges we've seen in the indictment, there's nothing saying that that the Guccifer thing ever panned out for the what they originally wanted to pin on Roger Stone as well. So it was another swing and a miss on their way to WikiLeaks. Again, it all goes back. That's why I leave my pinned tweet up, because I'm not going to change it until this is done, because I'm going to turn around again and say I told you so 8 months later and say this was what it was all about. The last indictment will be for WikiLeaks and or Julian Assange specifically.
What does this leave the Democrats' roadmap to impeachment? It seems like if this shit fizzles, what are they just going to be? Is plan A is just like get as close as you can to impeachment, try to run down the president's mojo.
Hearings will be all over the place. They will use what they can get publicly out of the Mueller report, whatever Barr decides that he will release, and it's completely within the domain of William Barr. The report will not be issued by Mueller. The Mueller report will be issued to the superior officer of the Attorney General's office, which in this case will finally be the Attorney General himself. And he will decide what is made public and what is released to Congress. Congress will take as much as they can out of that report to use additional hearings from the oversight committees. And then they will drag that process on for a whole year. And they will seek to constantly keep headlines bleeding into CNN, MSNBC. So it never really fucking ends. So that's basically what's going to happen. I think they would whip the issue pretty hard. And as I was speaking to earlier about, you know, we may have lost those 24 seats we needed to win, but we lost them by, 40,000 votes total through all those races. So if you're a swing seat Democrat, do you really want to sign on board with an unpopular effort to impeach the president that's never going to go anywhere in the Senate? I don't think they'll end up, unless there's something really egregious and uncovered, I don't think they're going to bother having an actual impeachment vote on any of the articles that will be drafted up. But they're certainly not going to stop with their hearings, which will be ad infinitum.
How quickly in politics your fortunes change, right? It was just 4 weeks ago everyone was convinced it's over. It's all over. We might as well just resign. And now, I'm actually thinking the biggest threat to Trump's reelection is us. It's this faint-hearted.
I've seen the enemy.
Yeah,
and it is us.
I don't think the Dems have shit. I think it's going to be the Trump has betrayed us right. That is our biggest danger, not the impeachment hearings, which I think are going to be a joke, right? If Mueller doesn't have the kill shot, then these hearings are good. I think the hearings will just end up pissing people off. It'll be sort of a sort of crass exercise going nowhere. But
I think you're probably right. I've said that before, actually. That exact phrase was, I've seen the enemy and it is us. That is our biggest problem with the Trump base. I mean, really, you can see it today. Everybody's hair is on fire. They're running around screaming that he somehow capitulated and he blinked and blah blah blah. They really don't understand. This is a 3-week moratorium of a shutdown. That it'll be a lot of back and forth about immigration. There will inevitably no deal will be made. Government will be shut down again on February 16th, and this time it'll be Pelosi's shutdown instead of Trump's. So people don't see it; they don't understand it. It's a fight you got to have now because you can't have it later. And as far as Trump's concerned, he's fighting his own party. He's fighting his own executive agency and the DOJ. He's fighting the Democrats in the Senate and the House and in the media. So it's bellum omnium. What is it? Bellum omnium contra omnis, whatever the fuck it is. It's an old saying in Latin by Thomas Hobbes, which is basically war of all against all. And that's what it is. I mean, Trump is at war with everybody and everybody's at war with him. I mean, it is literally.
Well, that's also that's Nietzsche, isn't it? That's Nietzsche.
I think it was Hobbes.
Allen gegen alle. Everything against.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Latin expression is much older, but I think
no
Hobbes
doubt.
is where I fucking remember it from college. But that is what Hobbes attributed to the state of nature. And that is the state of nature right now in D.C. The political philosophy at hand is war of all against all. And the sooner you recognize that as president, the better off you are. So he's making deals in his own vacuum of necessity, which is, hey, I got to get this Trump shutdown off my hands, which 2/3 of the American public says is mine. I'm going to wash my hands a little bit and let this air dry for 3 weeks and try to get an agreement where I will make a calculated concession on some immigration extensions as far as TBS is concerned and some DACA extensions. I will not give away the store if we can't come to a full agreement. And then boom, February 16th, after I've done my State of the Union address and made my pitch to the American people, if Pelosi tries to delay the State of the Union past that, it won't work. She can't do that when the government's open. Pelosi said, I will not negotiate until the government is open. The government is now open as of tonight. All right. And she said, you can't have the State of the Union until the government is reopened. Government is reopened. We've already planned for the address to be on Tuesday, and that's when it can be. There's no stopping that. So let's move on. Trump has got the footing again. And the only people that say otherwise are the crazy people on Fox and CNN and the idiots on Periscope that think that, Trump somehow acquiesced. The Steve Bannon acolytes who are, don't forget, they are the rats. They are the real rats. They are the ones that infiltrated early on in the administration. They are the real problem, more so than the establishment ever was. So remember that.
Yeah.
When you click your Twitter followers.
People become very clever, but being clever doesn't mean that you have any qualities that make you a decent and valuable, ally.
Yeah.
You're some rat fucker who thinks he's clever.
And no enemy of mine, Twitter or otherwise, has given me any articulation of an idea or a fact, absolute or anecdotal, the why they're right and I'm wrong. So I have yet to hear an intelligent argument that counters mine of any of the things that I posited today as an argument or a precept. So, none of them really have the ability cognitively to do that. So that's why you see them with the personal attacks and all this other dividing MAGA bullshit, stuff like that. So I've got 2% left. I'll jump off instead of the abrupt departure I usually have and say that I will see everybody tomorrow night on the New York City Guns YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribe to the goddamn thing already, because that's the only way you're going to know when it's on. And it's just much easier to do that way. It's all one word, New York City Guns. It is on YouTube. It's spelled out. It's not NYC. Don't search it that way. It's harder to do it. So, check it out. Watch us tomorrow night. We will do about an hour of actual substantive debate on what's going on. And then we will spend at least 2 hours pissing, just literally eviscerating upon our enemies and enjoying their corpses selecta.
Yep. All right, Adam. I will see you later, my friend.
Peace.
And there goes Mr. Gingrich. Thank you, everybody. It is I, Glenn at New York City Guns, just saying good night here on the Adam Gingrich live stream, which is very exciting. We will be here tomorrow on the New York City Guns YouTube channel, not on Periscope. We'll be on YouTube, 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you want to check out older episodes or, even tomorrow, most of the shows that are regularly scheduled, you can also watch them on my website, newyorkcityguns.com. So thanks, guys. I just one last thought about all of this is we were just 2 or 3 weeks ago, everyone was despairing. And it looks like 3 weeks later, things are looking up. And this is the whole point. The one thing that Bill Mitchell was good at, perhaps the only thing he was good at, is he was a good cheerleader. If he wasn't so brain dead, his cheerleading qualities are good. And since he is poison and his group are retarded, I will try to emulate in a small way this type of cheerleading that my estimation of a person is not how are they during the good times. It's who are they and how are they in the bad times, I think is the true definition of who you are. And when things are bad and we see all of these other types of people turning on the president, complaining, poisoning the well for other Trump supporters, to me, that's your true face. And I have a long list of these guys. And the people that, I see in both of these, yes, exactly, LA Fun Guy, loyalty. Loyalty is very important. Loyalty is like the secret ingredient to all successful endeavors. And as Adam was just making a point here, that Roger Stone and Manafort and all these guys, they know that come hell or high water, within let's say Mueller puts them in prison. Sometime before 2020, they'll be pardoned. And they're men. And they're going to keep their fucking mouths shut. They're not going to make up lies just to appease this criminal Mueller. And I think there's some value in that. I always looked at it's because so few people in my life have demonstrated that quality. It's a quality that I revere, perhaps more than any other. The tendency toward religiosity can be very cheap. There was some guy in the scope on the Periscope side. He was saying all these, what I considered this religious pablum. He's coming into a political scope saying only God is in control. It's like, it's a load of shit, man. God gave us free will. He's not in control in that sense. He's given that control to us to utilize in a good or a bad way, right? But it's this kind of brain-dead religiosity. If it had been my Periscope, I would have mocked and blocked him. But it's Adam's, so I'm watching on Adam's account, so I'm not doing any. I'm doing as little damage as possible to his Periscope. But it's hard for me to hear it. It's stupid. These are stupid people, deeply stupid. And they don't understand that what I respect is not some moron, spouting pseudo-religious bullshit. When the rubber meets the road, when the fists start flying, hopefully the people you're with, you don't have to look to your left and right to see if they're fighting too, or are you all alone? Because if you're considering you might be all alone, then you don't have good associates at all. You have nothing, actually. And it just in that way, it's good to know you all on this strange journey that is not over yet. It's good to know you all. Today was a good day. We should take it for what it is. It's a great day. It's a great day to be a Trump supporter, and it's a great day to be an American. So have a good one. I will see you tomorrow, 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Until then, be well.